Persephone is worried that her mom saw what happened, but hopes that the distance was great enough that she didn't see, because she's really hoping her mom didn't see her getting lightly choked on a Tuesday afternoon. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelby and this is Shelby Reads, where we talk about sapphic books all day, every day. For those of you who are new to my channel, I am a femme lesbian who has been with my wonderful butch wife for almost 13 years now. Yay us! If you want to hear more about sapphic books, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. We are almost at 100 subscribers. You guys have been really great, so thank you so much, for real. Thank you. Today we are going to be talking about the lesbian dark romance Captive in the Underworld by Lianyu Tan. Don't worry guys, we're going to take a break from dark romance soon, I promise. But you're going to have to hit that bell notification to see what I'm going to do next. Some flowers bloom only in the dark, ... In the land of the dead, Queen Hades' word is law. Hades gets what she wants, always, and what she wants is a certain goddess of the springtime. Innocent Persephone chafes beneath her mother's hawkish gaze and mercurial temper. Demeter has rebuffed all her daughter's suitors, but she is not yet satisfied. She strives to crush Persephone's spirit. Still, when Hades pulls her into the dark realm of the underworld, Persephone longs for the world above, even if it means an eternity under her mother's thumb. With tears and pleas for freedom ignored by pitiless Hades, Persephone must learn to satisfy her keeper in all ways, lest she suffer the consequences. And though she cannot deny that something blooms within her, something forbidden, Persephone despairs of ever feeling the sun upon her skin once more. No matter the cost, Hades intends to keep her forever. Captive in the Underworld is a standalone dark romance novel set in mythological ancient Greece. It is rooted in the misogyny and cruelties of the Hades and Persephone myth and contains sensitive material. Due to mature content and dark themes, this book is intended for adult readers only. It contains scenes depicting non-consensual sex, death, abuse, kidnapping, assault, and other intimate partner violence. It is not recommended for readers sensitive to such content. Before we get started, I just want to give my usual disclaimers. Number one, this review is for readers and not for the author or friends or family or stans of the author's work. Number two, this review will contain all of the spoilers. You have been warned. Number three, I'm going to try to make little jokes throughout this video as we're talking about this book. It's primarily not going to be a funny, goofy time overall. We are still talking about serious topics even when I'm being silly. I'm not making fun of real people, I'm making fun of Greek gods. If this type of content isn't for you, please consider just clicking off this video. I have some lovely reading wrap-ups and I have a Carmilla comparison video. Those are quite serious and fine. We're going to briefly talk about trigger warnings. The author has provided some for us. So it is quite similar to the other one, but we're just going to read it just in case. Content note: Captive in the Underworld is a standalone dark lesbian romance novel set in mythological ancient Greece. It is rooted in the misogyny and cruelties of the Hades Persephone myth and contains sensitive material. Due to mature content and dark themes, this book is intended for adult readers only. It contains scenes depicting death, abuse, kidnapping, assault, rape, and other intimate partner violence. It is not recommended for readers sensitive to such content. Neither the publisher nor the author endorses any behavior carried out by any character in this work of fiction. Additional content tags are available at author provides website. Now, my only complaint was that the description on Goodreads said non-consensual sex, which is just rape. So I am glad that the author clarified in the content notes. So we have some wonderful content tags on the website. We have a sex section, we have relationship, animal abuse / death, which by the way, I didn't really even notice. So it's very interesting to me that the author took time to write all of them down. But if you want the full list, I will leave the link in the comments below. I feel like it covers pretty much everything, so I'm not gonna go over it. You have been warned. We're going on now. I am glad that the author was quite thorough with her trigger warnings, in my opinion, and I do think we should praise authors for doing that because I feel like too often they leave stuff out on purpose and it just becomes a mess. Before we get started, I will just say I didn't hate this book. It's probably one of the only dark romance books I can recommend to people, but we will get there. Chapter 1. So as we discussed before, we will be dealing with the pantheon of Greek gods, and if you don't know who they are, I'm not gonna go into a ton of detail. You might have to look some things up. You might have to watch some videos if you're truly interested in this. But all you really truly need to know is that the Greek pantheon is a group of incredibly fucked up gods who do extremely fucked up things. We start with Persephone, who is with her mother Demeter, and they are about to go to a gathering of all the gods. Persephone is very worried and anxious that she might do something that will embarrass her mother. We get an inkling almost right away that this relationship between mother and daughter is very abusive, but in the beginning it just seems a bit controlling. I know a lot of people have problems with lore Olympus specifically for having this trope of Demeter kind of being a bad person, but for me personally, I don't really have any issues with it, and it's my channel, so I'm gonna do what I want. Her mother asks if she remembers what she told her, and Persephone says yes. No wine, like very limited wine, and no promises. They are at Zeus's palace, and if you don't know anything about Greek mythology, he's like the worst one. He turns into animals to assault women. Like, if you think anyone in this book is bad, he's probably a billion times worse. They are announced once they get into the actual palace, and her mother is kind of guiding her away from well-wishers. Persephone thinks to herself while this is going on that this would be a great time to reconnect with Athena and Artemis, who she hasn't seen in a very long time, and it's been years since all three of them have been in the same place. Instead of that, a god named Hephaestus approaches Persephone to say hello. She says hello and tries very hard not to stare at his leg, which is a metal prosthetic. We are going to allow this and kind of ignore that ableism simply because she is very sheltered. Demeter interrupts them talking and says, actually, we have yet to speak to Zeus. And he says, of course. And as they're walking away from him, Persephone says, I wonder what he could have wanted. Demeter says, what do all gods want? And tells her to dissuade him firmly. Is she wrong though? I know that in the context of this novel, Demeter is abusive, but in the context of Greek mythology, she is like 1000% correct. And she should say it. Persephone agrees to dissuade him. Also, even though she is abusive, a broken clock is right twice a day. They make it to Zeus's throne room. In this book, Zeus is Persephone's father, and I wasn't sure about the Greek mythology. I had to look it up, and it is true. He is her father. I really couldn't remember who her dad was, but in Greek mythology, if you're confused, it's usually Zeus. When they get there, Hera, Zeus's wife, is not there, and to be perfectly honest with you, that is probably the best case scenario for everyone involved right now. Zeus greets her and says, Demeter, where have you been hiding her all these years? Demeter doesn't say anything to this, but she pushes Persephone forward, and Persephone professes her allegiance to Zeus. He is happy to accept her fealty and tells her to go eat and drink. She says, yes, father, and then his attention is already on his brother Poseidon immediately. I guess when you have that many kids, how can you care about them? She slips out into one of the courtyards while all her elders are distracted, but oh no, a wild man has appeared.
Why would a man be there? Why would a man be there? No, it's actually pissing me off.
Hephaestus has found her in the courtyard and his attentions. She says yes, but tries to continue talking, and he cuts her off and offers her a gift.
I've brought you a gift.
What is it?
It's a crystal. Nothing more.
She says you shouldn't have, but she has no way of refusing. That wouldn't seem rude. It is a music box with a wind-up metal bird, and she loves it. She says that it's beautiful. He says that his forger is best known for his weapons, but that he could create so much more, and that he actually prefers making scythes over swords. She compliments him and says that he has a true talent. I'm glad that the men do not stay in this book for very long in this story. This was painful. Luckily for us, Demeter is here to interrupt this interaction and says, I see you found us again. Persephone shows her mother the gift and says, isn't it beautiful? She says it's lovely, and then she turns to Hephaestus and says, can I speak to you in private, please? While they're talking, Persephone takes this chance to leave and go back inside the palace. She's iconic for that, and I appreciate it. While she's there, she recognizes Aphrodite's perfume before she even sees her. Aphrodite sashays up to her. Aphrodite says, I haven't expected to see you here, and it's been forever. Persephone says, it hasn't been quite that long, but I am pleased that I could have come. Aphrodite asks if she's cold and starts to like unwrap the thing, like part of Persephone's outfit that like covers her shoulders and such, which Persephone said earlier was so frumpy that she might as well be taking like a vow of celibacy. She then rearranges Persephone's neckline to show more cleavage. Persephone says that she's fine, and she hoists that neckline right back up. Aphrodite is sure that Persephone is going to find love tonight, and Persephone says, I'm not looking for that. Aphrodite does not believe her and says, everyone's looking for that, and who will it be? Will it be Apollo? Will it be Ares? She's like, no, they're too pig-headed for you. Persephone says she'd sooner join Athena and avow chastity. Aphrodite says, you don't need that, and don't tell me your mother will be mad, she's not here. And Persephone has an aha light bulb moment and says, my mother isn't here, in her own head, and her mom is nowhere in view. Aphrodite asks Persephone to dance with her, and Persephone says, I don't know the steps, but Aphrodite isn't taking no for an answer, and so she grabs Persephone and they go out onto the dance floor. They're dancing for a while, and eventually Persephone is having a good time and she's figured out all of the steps. Persephone notices a little bit too much about Aphrodite, like her golden curls or her long legs, the unrestrained bounce in her chest, and her face grows hot. Aphrodite sees her and says, oh, that explains so many things. And this girl clocked her being a lesbian so fast. Persephone says she has no idea what she means, and then she tears away through the crowd to get away from Aphrodite, because we are a repressed homosexual. Persephone is walking further away from the main hall because she felt like Aphrodite was looking into her soul. No, she just knows what a lesbian looks like, and she's the goddess of love and like sexuality, fertility. She's wandering aimlessly now to get her heartbeat too slow to a normal pace. She starts freaking the hell out because in her mind, if Aphrodite knows, then everybody will know, including her mother. She doesn't want to have this conversation with her mother quite yet, or possibly ever. She says that it isn't a crime, but her mother has her life completely mapped out for her, and she's not going to be happy to hear it. We hate trying to see mothers live vicariously through their daughters. Persephone can hear voices approaching from where she is in the courtyard, but they're actually coming from a level below. So she presses herself against a column to conceal her hiding spot. Zeus is trying to persuade someone who we will quickly learn is Hades to allow one of his lovers to be brought back from the dead, because it's his wife's fault that she's dead. I mean, it's really his fault, but whatever. Hades says that Zeus should direct his questions to the fates. Persephone is continuing to eavesdrop on this, and she thinks to herself that a better, like more pious girl would just walk away immediately, and that Demeter would expect no less of her, but she doesn't move. Hades makes the argument that people die every day, and some people's lives are longer and some are shorter, and that she cannot simply make exceptions because you chose a new person to sleep with. I love that Hades stands up to Zeus 10 out of 10. Persephone is like shook because she has never heard anyone who was not worried about making Zeus upset before. Zeus tries again and says there must be something you want, and Hades gets a little bit quieter for a second, for like quite a long time apparently, before saying, no, what could I possibly want? Like, no god can match my riches, not even you. Zeus says perhaps that was a mistake, and Hades counters with, oh well, but the great Sky Father couldn't possibly make a mistake, right? Zeus is getting angry and says we will discuss this later, before he storms off in a different direction. Persephone is now looking and wondering how she can make a discreet exit. She is not successful though, because Hades turns and looks exactly in her hiding spot. Hades says, you might as well come out now. There really isn't much else she can do, so she does come out and she meets with Hades. Hades asks what she has to say for herself. Persephone apologizes immediately and says that it was wrong to eavesdrop. Hades says, and yet you did Demeter teach you no manners? Persephone is getting even more embarrassed, and she cannot read Hades' expressions and says, of course she taught me manners, the fault is mine, it doesn't fall on her at all. Hades tells her that if she's going to forego conventions, that you have to try to not get caught. Persephone is worried that Hades is going to tell her mother, but Hades says that that remains to be seen and invites Persephone to walk with her. Persephone knows she can't disobey like a direct order, no matter what she wants or what her mother wants, so she hurries along and follows her. She asks politely if Hades has been well, and also I hear you've not been seen for some time. We can tell that she's kind of been keeping tabs on Hades, which is super duper gay. Hades says well enough and asks Persephone if she's been keeping safe. Persephone says yes, thank you. They go up several flights of stairs to go to a balcony that overlooks the ocean. There's only one way up or down, so they will be able to see anybody who's like trying to come up to see them, including like Persephone's mother. Hades is just looking out at the ocean and ignoring Persephone, and Persephone in her brain is like, I can't leave without a clear dismissal, so I just have to wait here. She really doesn't why Hades wants her presence at all. I can think of a few reasons. Persephone is getting frustrated about being ignored, so she asks, may I ask a question? Hades is like, out with it. Persephone asks if plants grow in the underworld. Hades just stares at her and then says yes. Is that all? Persephone is getting embarrassed, but she's asking if plants have souls, if they're actually like truly growing, or if that's their souls like taking a different form. She's always thought that trees particularly would like have souls, but she has questions about other plants. Hades cuts her off and says, I would rather not discuss things about my job function to you. Persephone starts with, but when you were with Zeus, and then cuts off because she immediately realizes her mistake, and she's horrified by herself. Hades says, this is why we don't eavesdrop on our elders. The elders thing is kind of gross to me. I know they're gods, and this whole thing is gross, but whatever. Persephone says an apology immediately, but she feels that words alone seem kind of inadequate. She touches the ivy-covered rail, and the plant starts growing, and it touches her and Hades at the same time, kind of like starts wrapping them up a little. Hades ends up touching her shoulder and says, fascinating. Persephone's breath is caught in her throat because she's having gay feelings, particularly because Hades is no longer looking at the plant and she's looking at her when she says it. Persephone thinks that they are so close and that she could kiss Hades if she wanted to, not that she wants to, right?
All right, move on. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Nothing to see here. please.
Hades trails her arm down Persephone's collarbone and places her fingers around her neck. Please remember that these are Greek gods and they are going to be doing fucked up stuff in Greek god fashion. I cannot warn you guys enough. But this is honestly one of the reasons I don't mind this book. Again, they're Greek gods and not people, and we all know that Greek gods are terrible. They're awful beings. Persephone is trying to figure out what Hades' perfume smells like, but she's also trying to figure out what to say or do to make Hades stop touching her. But don't worry, mommy Demeter is here to save the day. Hades doesn't release her immediately though. She gives like a slight smile and her fingers tighten around Persephone's neck, and the ivy continues to coil around Hades' wrist. They can hear Demeter's footsteps as she's climbing these like 10 billion stairs, and then Hades releases her when they're closer. Persephone is worried that her mom saw what happened, but hopes that the distance was great enough that she didn't see, because she's really hoping her mom didn't see her getting lightly choked on a Tuesday afternoon. Persephone has this idea that she wants to ask Aphrodite a question, but then she gets really caught up on what Hades' smile means, and she thinks that if it was meant to frighten her, she succeeded. Demeter gets all the way up the stairs and she immediately starts to kind of coo and awe over Hades, asking her all kinds of questions and saying, "You look so severe, you look like you're dressed for a funeral." Hades says she would prefer a funeral, wouldn't you? And Demeter thinks that she is so funny. She also asks if they're going to be seeing more of Hades this year. Hades says probably not. Demeter's like, well, why not? And Hades says the same reasons as always. Demeter says, well, that's nonsense. I don't know how you can bear to be trapped in such an awful place like the Underworld all year round. She looks at her daughter and is like, can you imagine it? And Persephone is like, no. And she's untangling herself from the ivy. Demeter emphasizes that the Underworld is simply dreadful and kind of a shithole, but Hades just says nothing. I mean, why would she when this woman is literally just standing there insulting her home? Hades and Persephone share a look, and Persephone is trying to figure out if she's amused or annoyed. She can't really read her though, and Demeter keeps going like a really annoying mom and says, well, we each have our burdens to bear. And she takes Persephone's arm and says, speaking of which, I have to get this one home and in bed. Hades says, of course, it was nice to see you, Demeter and Persephone. Her name shouldn't have sounded indecent coming from Hades' lips, but all the same, Persephone shivered. She mumbled her farewells as she stared at her feet. Demeter gave a little tug on her arm and then they were away. We are already interested, folks, as we can see it is happening while they are fleeing from the god of the Underworld. Persephone asks if they really have to go so soon. Demeter says that it's not soon. It's almost dark and you need to be in bed. Persephone says that we have to find my dad and say our goodbyes, and Demeter says, I've already done that for us. Persephone says that she would have liked to see him again, but Demeter is ignoring her and says, what was that? Speak up. Persephone just bites her lip and says that it's nothing. They're in the royal wing where like the immediate royal family lives, and Persephone sees Aphrodite and she's like going down the staircase. Aphrodite is like reconfiguring her outfit. Aphrodite winks at Persephone and Demeter's hold tightens over her. Once they're safely away, Demeter calls Aphrodite a strumpet, which is such a funny insult, by the way. I don't feel like I've ever heard that used. Persephone defends Aphrodite and says it's only her function, mother. Her mother ignores her and now they're outside and they're going to get in the chariot with the horses to leave. Persephone thinks to herself that she would have liked to have walked, but her mother views walking as plebeian. When they're pretty far away, Demeter asks what Hades wanted. Persephone says that they spoke of nothing of consequence, they only talked about plants. Don't harass her with your inane prattle in the future, Demeter said. Don't you know she hasn't been seen above ground for at least 70 summers? She must have much more pressing things to do. Whatever would a silly little girl like you have to say to the queen of the Underworld? As we can see, her mother is actually incredibly demeaning toward her, and it's kind of really sad. Persephone thinks to herself that if she hadn't been caught by Hades, she had no intention of speaking to her, period. And she doesn't even feel like their conversation can be considered a conversation. She thinks about how she squandered the day, and she doesn't know when she'll be able to see Athena and Artemis again. Demeter asks about their agreement, and Persephone says she hardly drank any wine. Demeter says, what about the other thing? And Persephone promises that she didn't make any promises. Demeter says that even a kind smile is taken as an invitation to some. She then also asks what happened to her outer piece of clothing that Aphrodite had taken. Persephone makes up an excuse saying that she danced and she must have dropped it and that she's sorry she just forgot. She thinks about also how she left the gift from Hephaestus. Demeter rolled her eyes skyward but remained silent the rest of the chariot ride home. Once their driver had brought them to the back of the house and departed, she turned to Persephone. You'll try not to bother her again, will you, dear? Hades? Persephone asked. Demeter twirled a lock of hair around her finger. It's just that I would so hate for her to take offense at your prattling. She can be vindictive, you know. Her mother is such a bitch, but I do really enjoy that in all these interactions, it's just kind of proving that she's abusive, whether Persephone knows it or not. Persephone feels like this warning is unnecessary. She thinks again about Hades asking her if she has no manners. She promises her mom that she won't bother her again. They've arrived back at their house and her mom's like, come, the hour is late. But when they go inside the house, Persephone cannot quite forget about her audience with the queen of the underworld. Ooh. Chapter 2. The seasons are passing and the story takes place over like hundreds of years worth of time, simply because they are gods and they experience long periods of time. Her memory of meeting with Hades feels like a distant memory, and she doesn't think about her overly often except a little bit in spring. She's only a little bit gay, you guys. Demeter has been very busy. There's a lot more fields and humanity seems to spread like a weed, even though a couple of the other gods keep sending all of them to war and therefore they end up in Hades' realm. They're always busy and her house is always filled with acolytes and attendants, and they all serve her mother, but she rarely sees any of the other gods. So who surprisingly comes to her house? Not our girl Hades, unfortunately for us.
Here's Johnny.
It's Hephaestus. Yay. Persephone is surprised to see him. Says, what are you doing here? He smiles nervously. She invites him to come inside and she's gonna get him some wine, some snacks. They can have it together. He coughs and says, actually, I would kind of like to talk to you quickly before we do that. And he's like, can I speak plainly? And she's like, yeah, because she's a young, dumb lesbian. She doesn't know where this is going. She tells him she still remembers the gift he made for her. He says, oh, I'm glad that was like over 100 summers ago. Just a long time. She says, really? Because she like can't believe it's been that long. And he's like, I would like to fashion you many more delights, each more wondrous than the last. And then he starts stuttering for a bit. And then he's like, will you permit me to court you? She says, oh, and glances away. And she thinks to herself that she's never really thought of him that way before. Again, we have a lesbian in our midst. A vision of their future flashed before her. He would not despise her as Hera despised Zeus, and he would be mindful of his conquests, pursuing them quietly without compromising Persephone's reputation, unlike the other gods. Under his wing, she would be free from her mother's house at last. She could do worse. I would be honored, she said, and tried to smile. She offered her hand. Let's go inside and tell mother. I can really tell that her idea of the future is very sad because she's a Greek goddess. This is the terrible Greek pantheon. She seems most excited about the fact that they will be married and her husband won't hate her and she won't hate him and he'll keep his affairs quiet. And it just feels really sad to me that that's all the things she's looking forward to when she's clearly a lesbian, but this is the best she thinks she can get. She gets him into a seat and she is in the midst of pouring them some wine, and her mother comes in and says, my dear boy, what are you doing here? Persephone says he asked to court me and that I've accepted, but I would like your blessing. Her mother looks between them and starts laughing. Please forgive me, Demeter said, wiping an imaginary tear from her eye. I mean you no ill will, Hephaestus. It's simply that my Persephone is yet a child and lacks the maturity to be anyone's potential bride. She infantilizes her so heavily, it's kind of crazy. He tries to defend Persephone and says that Persephone clearly believes that she is ready for marriage and the trappings of adulthood. Persephone agrees and affirms this. Demeter says you can't possibly know what you want. You want an eternity with him?
How do you know what's good for me? That's my opinion!
I do kind of agree with her because in this context, any Greek god that you pick is probably going to abuse you. Persephone yells it's a courtship, not a contract. Demeter says enough and then throws the wine on Hephaestus. Persephone is very upset. He says to Demeter that his father said that she would see reason, but clearly you are lost in your delusions. Demeter tells him to get out of her house and is threatening to throw a plate at him. Persephone is now begging her mother and Hephaestus says you can't keep her a prisoner forever. And then she starts throwing the plate and she tells him to get out again. Persephone leads him out of the house and apologizes and says, I had no idea she would treat you so badly. Hephaestus squeezed wine from his tunic. It's quite all right. Ares warned me about her temper, but I didn't listen. I thought she might look upon me more favorably. I was wrong. Ares? Persephone asked. Hephaestus glanced away. Perhaps I spoke out of turn. You didn't know he was trying to court you? Persephone grimaced. There was that year I received a severed Gorgon head as a present, but I thought ... Mother said it was a mistake. I didn't actually see him in person. Demeter has something of a reputation. How long has this been going on? Persephone asked. The Gorgon head incident felt like it had been years ago, decades even. Hephaestus grimaced. I don't know. A while perhaps. He hesitated. You may think this cowardly of me, but I have no desire to cross the goddess of the harvest. A pity. If you manage to change her mind, by all means send a message to my Ford. Persephone smiled to hide her mixed emotions. Of course, I understand. I am so glad that this loser is out of the picture simply because I'm sick of spelling his name in this Google Doc. He kisses her hand and leaves. She goes back inside and Demeter is shredding a lettuce leaf between her hands. Demeter asks if he saw reason and Persephone answers that he left. Persephone decides to broach the topic of Demeter chasing away all of her suitors and asks if she treated Ares the same way, and Demeter says, of course, I don't discriminate. Persephone asks why weren't they worthy gods, and Demeter says, no, none of them are worthy, and anyone who can take you away from me is my enemy. We love to see emotional incest in the morning. Persephone clearly loves it too because she says, mother, please, you're frightening me. Demeter says, swear to me that you will not leave, and she's like shaking her shoulders, being absolutely insane. Persephone swears. Demeter was pressing hard enough to leave bruises. His ichor runs through your veins. How can I forget it, seeing it there plain on your face? Your father has whores in every corner of the civilized world. You know that, don't you? Persephone fumbled for something to say that would not be considered blasphemous. His children are many, and you would seek to follow in his footsteps. No, no. Persephone's throat constricted. Aphrodite had not divulged her secret then. Her preference for goddesses was not a topic she particularly wished to discuss with Demeter ever. Demeter studied her. Persephone did her best to project an aura of frightened honesty. She spoke the truth, besides, though perhaps not all of it. Demeter released her. I cannot stand the sight of you, she said, waving her off. Persephone stepped away with relief, rubbing her shoulders. I'm going to help in the kitchen, she said, and ran before Demeter could think of something else to blame her for. As we can see, their relationship is very complicated, and I think that it has to do a lot with, at least in this book, Persephone's conception was not consensual. And so while Demeter is having this emotionally incestuous relationship with her daughter and being very enmeshed with her, she at the same time cannot stand to look at her, especially when she does something she doesn't like. Probably because it reminds her of Persephone's father Zeus and the terrible event that ended up with her being pregnant. I think that we can discuss the nuance here while also saying that Demeter is being a terrible person to her daughter and she's kind of being a terrible person overall. I would also like to bring up this is why we need reproductive rights and freedoms. Page break. The servants are being quiet around Persephone and it's because they're afraid of their boss. Persephone is trying to figure out how to diffuse her mother's anger. She is lugging a pail of stuff, but when she gets to the trash, she sees a bouquet of flowers there. They are wilting and they don't respond to her touch. She asks the maid if she knows why the flowers are here and how they ended up here. The maid says that she does not know. She only knows that Demeter says they're not to be kept in the house. Persephone asks if this happened more than once, and the maid says, oh, well, and it's obvious that it has happened more than one time. So Persephone asks how many times. The maid just gulps and shakes her head and then she leaves. Persephone wonders as she goes up to her room how long Demeter is going to try and rule her life, and she puts the only flower that she could save in a vase. And she thinks to herself that Hades is bothersome and insolent after all. She then thinks immediately that she shouldn't leap to conclusions and that she also shouldn't think so highly of herself and that her mother might be wrong about a lot of things, but she's not wrong about a girl like Persephone would never be able to attract the queen of the underworld. I think we can really see how she's eroded her daughter's self-esteem to the point where, like, I'm not even sure she had self-esteem to begin with. She's still thinking about whether she should acknowledge the gift when her mother, like, rips her room door wide open. Persephone sits up and she asks what's the matter, and she tries to block the flower from, like, any kind of viewpoint. Her mother is just here to harass her again. Ignorant children like you are so naive about what it takes to survive in this world, Demeter said, as if they'd never ended their previous conversation. She stood in the doorway blocking the only exit. I've bled so that you could live a charmed life free from struggle and sorrow, the kind of childhood I never had. I've always been grateful for what you've done for me. Grateful, Demeter sneered. Is that what you call cavorting behind my back? Consorting with cripples? Persephone bristled. That is unkind of you, mother, and besides, Hephaestus and I never. And then she's cut off. I found this part really relatable because I had abusive parents and they were convinced that because they gave me a better childhood than what they had, that they couldn't be abusive. And it kind of makes you a little sad because you think like, wow, how bad must their childhood have been if it was worse than this? And I don't have like a lot of sympathy or empathy for my parents because they were both grown adults, but I do think thinking about it sometimes gives you insight that you wouldn't have had otherwise. We also just gotta love the ableism, no more bad bitches only audio for Demeter. Demeter sees the flower and says, what is this doing in my house? Persephone doesn't say anything right away, which apparently is not the correct answer, because Demeter throws a flower in her face, which then falls onto the floor. Demeter says she won't have such filth here, and Persephone says it was a gift to me and you had no right to dispose of it. Her mother is now absolutely losing it, and she goes off on the whole, it's my hearth, it's my home, and this ungrateful child tells me I have no so right. It's so like abusive parents to pretend that giving you food, clothing, everything else is enough, but also that everything in that home belongs to them. And it's really just another control tactic from abusers. And they use this on children who are an oppressed class in order to control everything about their life. I know sometimes we don't go too deep on this channel, but I'm just saying it's an abuse tactic, that's all. Persephone gets up and she grabs the flower and she tries to go toward the door, and her mother says, "Where are you going?" Persephone says, "You said you don't want the flower in here, I'm gonna bring the flower outside." Demeter says, "When I'm talking to you, you will sit and you will listen," which again just feels like an abusive tactic because Persephone in her mind is just trying to do the thing that her mother wants her to do, which is remove the gift, but Demeter has shifted the goalpost so that she can denigrate and verbally harass her daughter and verbally abuse her over and over. "When you were born, you were such a little thing, so frail and useless. Hera advised me to cast you down as she'd done with her son. Did you know that?" "No," Persephone whispered. She'd heard this tale countless times before, but knew what was expected of her. "But I didn't listen to her. I nursed you from my own breast, and to this day, here you are, still draining the life from your poor exhausted mother. Why I bothered to keep you at all, Gaia only knows. If I'd known you'd be such a spoiled and selfish brat, I'd have followed Hera's advice and cast you into the ocean."
Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Do you understand? All I do is worry and slave and defend you, and all I get back is that fucking face on your face!
This is just another tactic that abusers use to make people feel bad about wanting normal things, especially when like your parent is the abuser. It is perfectly normal for children to want to establish their independence and figure out things on their own, but abusers see this as a threat because they want to be able to keep the person so that they can abuse them over and over and over again. Whether these people want to admit it or not, that is the goal. At the end of the day, it was her decision to keep Persephone and her decision to continue to abuse her the entire fucking time and never let her forget how she was born and all the things that Demeter has allegedly done for her. We're gonna find out through this book though that she hasn't done nearly as much as she's claiming right now. Persephone thinks to herself that being cast into the ocean doesn't sound so bad right now, and that is so deeply upsetting. It's just how you know that this relationship has completely tanked and you probably can't repair it. Persephone apologizes again, but Demeter just keeps going. She says things like, I'm gonna read some to you. "I should have known nothing good could come from your father's seed, like he might be the king of the gods, but at heart he is a beast. Please remember that these are Greek gods," and Persephone flinches because she thinks that Zeus can hear her mother, but there's like no indication that he did, and she's like looking at the sky to make sure. Demeter yells at her and says, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." But when Persephone goes to look at her mother, she slaps her, and it's so hard that Persephone can taste blood. Her mother says that she would be nothing without her. Persephone argues back and says that it's not true, but she's just whispering. She's not really asserting herself anymore. Demeter says, "Oh, you think that you're so worldly. You think you're so capable." And if she's neither of those things, whose fault is that? Is it perhaps the fault of the person who has been isolating her and abusing her and sheltering her? If she is not capable and worldly, whose fault is that? Sorry that I'm getting so much into the abuse aspect, but I do feel that it is pretty well done because I just remember my parents doing things really similarly to this, but honestly it was about chores. So they would be upset that I wasn't doing chores that they had never taught me how to do, and then I would be like, "Oh, can you teach me?" But they wouldn't want to teach me, and then they would get angry when I did it, but I did it incorrectly, and then they'd be like, "I'll just do it." And it just feels like it's something to control the kid that you have in your house. You know what I mean? It's just like a repeating cycle, and I feel like it is for Persephone too, because you can see her kind of flailing to try and do the things her mother wants her to do, but it's not enough because this thing is a circle, and abusers just keep going over and over and over in the same ways so that they can abuse you some more. Because at the end of the day, the conversation is never going to give the abuser what they want because they're abusive. They don't want to change. They don't want to stop and be like, "Oh, what am I doing?" They want to keep engaging in the behavior that they've been engaging in. Persephone continues to try and argue that like I didn't say those things, but her mother just goes to the trunk at the end of her bed and starts like throwing things out of it, and she's going over every single thing that she's ever bought Persephone and like making a point to say, "I bought you these things." And again, this is just an abuse tactic because food, water, shelter, clothing, education, these are things that abusers have to provide, that any parent has to provide. And if you didn't want to provide those things, you shouldn't have become a parent. It's literally just the bare minimum too. It's not even like nurturing your child emotionally or intellectually necessarily. She's going on about how these are her things that she got with her sweat and labor, and then she's like, you take them and you go. Persephone tries to say that isn't what I meant. Of course, I appreciate everything that you've done for me while raising me. But her mother cuts her off and does the whole, you have no idea what I've done to keep you safe. She says, you have no idea of the dangers of the outside. You have no idea of the sacrifices that I've made. All of this is just crazy deflection because she keeps going around to other things and bringing them up, and they aren't necessarily directly related. Like, her thinking a lot of these things that she keeps bringing up doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the fact that other people see Persephone as a grown woman and are attracted to her. Even if Persephone was like asexual and not interested in any of this, her mother would still be using this against her because she sees it as like this sign that she's going to lose her codependent, emotionally incestuous relationship. And it's because she is like constantly switching the goalpost, also because she's using Darvo, and it is so incredibly obvious. Persephone is now at the point where she's begging her mother, and her mother's just like, okay, let's see how you'll do for once without me, and then you'll know all of the things that I've done for you. Persephone just keeps begging her mother not to do this, but Demeter has just decided. She grabs Persephone's face and she is like digging her nails into Persephone's scalp, and she looks her in the eyes and she says, from now until harvest, you are not my daughter. And then she drops her hands like she's discarding something that is loathsome, and then wipes her hands on her outfit before she turns her back on her daughter. And she tells Persephone to get out. Persephone is internally freaking out because she doesn't have any idea how she's going to survive on her own. She still grabs a pile of her things and she hopes that her mother will change her mind and come around, but her mother is not doing that. So Persephone flees down the stairs and goes out the back door. She's running. She has no idea where she's going, but she knows she has to be anywhere but here. Chapter 3. Persephone is not having a good time as she's running away, but could we really expect her to be? She is having the worst day. She thinks, where will I go? And she knows that her father won't turn her away, but it would definitely potentially get her father's wife Hera's wrath on her, and that's not ideal. She thinks that she could go see Hephaestus, that guy who tried to court her, but he has already made it clear that he does not wish to anger her mother. She also knows that all of her friends belong to her mother's lands, like the nymphs, those type of creatures, and she doesn't want to trespass somewhere she's clearly not wanted, not to mention they might not even talk to her. She thinks about going to her grandmother Gaia, who is the earth, and like burrowing in the earth for a while and just sleeping until her mom isn't like mad anymore. But she knows her grandma rarely meddles in her family's affairs, and she's like, who am I to ask my grandmother for help? I'm nobody. So Persephone starts crying. I feel bad for her, but she doesn't think about her friends Athena or Artemis at this point, and I thought that that was kind of weird because she mentioned them multiple times by name in the other chapters, so like kind of odd she didn't think to ask them, but she's freaking out. We're gonna give her a free pass. After she gets out of the fields and the plants have been like attacking her and whipping her and stuff, she finds some kind of cave, and she knows that it's past the boundaries because her mother doesn't like quote unquote unproductive land. That's just like kind of a crazy thought, because if you think about like the ecosystems that potentially live in a cave and like stuff like that, like it's kind of crazy to be like, that's unproductive, but whatever. As she goes deeper in, the only lights are these phosphorescent mushrooms, and she uses her powers to make way more of them so she can see better. When she gets pretty far into the cave, there is this yellow flower there that really shouldn't be there because there is no sunlight. There's no way for it to get any. She touches the flower and the air grows colder. She waits for a minute and then the ground starts like shaking beneath her. She grabs onto a stalagmite so that she doesn't fall in. After all this, the cave has sunken like halfway into the earth, and then like a chariot and a chariot with horses comes out, and there's like a path that goes like down, down, down. Guess who's here, guys? Persephone wonders if she should run, but she can't really get her legs to do the thing as the chariot emerges with the beautiful horses. Persephone knows it's Hades, but doesn't look like directly at her because she's thinking to herself that if she runs now, she can keep her promise to her mother, and then maybe she could still be forgiven. Hades' chariot comes to a halt, and Hades asks her why she's trembling. Persephone cannot help but stare at her in her all black outfit. Hades says, you have journeyed far to be here. Persephone thinks to herself, it can't be that far. Hades can't stop looking at the bruises on Persephone. These bruises are from her mother attacking her, remember? Persephone tries to say it's nothing and also says, I promised my mother I wouldn't trouble you, but Hades grabs her wrist and says, wait. Persephone thinks that Hades' fingers are unexpectedly warm and kind of gentle. She snatches her hand away though and takes a step step back, saying, please, Queen Hades, I have to leave like I promised. Hades says that there's no reason to be frightened and aren't we friends? Persephone cannot conceive of a world in which they are friends, but she says yes anyway, because I mean, what else can she say? Hades says, well, as a friend, tell me why you're out here all alone at this hour. Persephone lies and says that she tripped. Hades says, well, it's fortunate that you tripped so close to one of my gateways then. She plucks a leaf from Persephone's hair and then she like wraps a strand like around her finger. Like she gets close to Persephone and she sniffs her neck.
That's the sound of the police!
Persephone says, you presume too much. Hades' lips thinned. Do I? You stand at the threshold of my realm, the scent of my asphodels on your skin. Why else are you here if not to offer yourself to me? What? I never. There must be some mistake, Persephone said. This whole day had been one long mistake, upsetting her mother, walking past the grain fields, and now disobeying her mother once more by speaking with Hades instead of running away and pretending she had never found this place. Hades' eyes narrowed, her gaze piercing. A mistake. Are you so blind as to believe the legends then? Hades approached her, taking one step forward for each step that Persephone took back. Do you accept all the lies they tell about me? Persephone's back scraped against the side of the cave. She pressed her palms against it, trembling as Hades leaned in. Do you know what they say about you, Demeter's daughter? Hades asked, her voice low, her eyes as dark as pools of water on a moonless night. Persephone saw herself reflected in them, a bruised and battered girl with hair the color of mud. She knew, everyone knew, and she thought she would crumble from shame to hear the slurs from Hades' lips. They echoed through her thoughts, spoken by a chorus of faceless, nameless voices. Frigid bitch, thinks herself too good for Hera's sons. How is it that the goddess of spring keeps herself barren? Please don't, she whispered. Hades cupped Persephone's face in her hand and ran her thumb over the girl's lips. Persephone's breath came in ragged gasps. Don't, she said again. The cave wall was cold at her back, the chill seeping in through her chiton and into her bones. The heat radiating from Hades' body felt like fire by comparison. Hades leaned in, and for one terrifying, exhilarating moment, Persephone thought she might kiss her. But Hades instead brought her lips to Persephone's ear. You were always destined to be mine. Please remember the warnings. I know I keep harping on it, but it's Greek god doing fucked up Greek god things. Do not expect this to go pleasantly, okay? Okay. When Greek gods are in the room, there is nothing we can do about it. Hades takes a step back and goes to her chariot. Persephone thinks to herself that she needs to run while Hades is distracted, but she can't move and she says, what do you mean? Hades says, we will go on a journey, you and I. And then Hades snatches Persephone. Persephone says, stop, let me go. This does not work, obviously. And they start going down to the underworld. The pressure of descending into the earth's crust and all the other stuff going on is just too much for Persephone, and she passes out and Hades catches her as she faints. Chapter 4. Persephone wakes up to the sound of water sloshing, and as we know in Greek mythology, there is the river Styx, which is how the dead get from the world of the living to the underworld. They are on a boat on this river. Hades asks if she can help her to a sitting position, and she promises her that the nausea will pass, and she gives her a bucket. Just imagining the god of the underworld giving someone a nausea bucket. Persephone is willing herself not to throw up. After a while, the nausea does kind of diminish significantly and she pushes the bucket away. She asks what's wrong with her, and Hades explains that she is alive and therefore the transition to the underworld will be uncomfortable. Persephone grabs the edge of the boat and looks over into the river and sees like some dead guy, and he's all bloated and disgusting. And now she really wants that bucket, but it's too far away from her now. She asks what all the noises are, and Hades says that the shades are restless tonight, and then she and the guy who drive the boat are laughing about it. Hades says that they are almost there, and when they get to the other side of the river, they secure the boat to the dock. Hades scoops her up before she can protest and gets onto the pier, and the guy who was on the boat just goes back to his job of doing the whole back and forth across the river. She falls unconscious once again at some point, and when she wakes up, they are in a chariot. The chariot stops and Persephone says that she can stand, but she doesn't really sound all that convincing. Hades says, she puts her down, and Persephone asks why they have stopped. Hades says she has someone she would like her to meet, and Persephone says, take me home. Hades says this is your home and there is no humor to that. Persephone does a quick rundown of how she can try and get out of here, but there are literally no options because the land is barren, so she can't use her powers. She has no favors, no weapons, no allies, so she thinks to herself she should say something nice to her captor. Instead, she tells her to go pleasure a goat.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
Hades is trying not to laugh laugh, but says, "You must be feeling better then. Good." And then she leaves the chariot and walks on ahead. We get to meet Cerberus, who is a wonderful, beautiful little baby with 3 heads, who is very excited to see his mummy. Persephone thinks to herself that she is not a great lover of dogs, and that unfortunately means I am not a great lover of her. I have 3 dogs. We are a dog lover household. My dogs are my children. Get out. Hades motions for her to come closer, and Persephone knows that if she doesn't do this, they're going to like wait forever. Like they're not going to be able to move on until she does it. Hades introduces them to each other, and Cerberus sniffs her hand with all 3 heads and then gives a little nuzzle. She almost knocks Persephone off her feet before Hades says, "Good boy." Then they get back in the chariot, the gates open, and they go through it. Page break. They go to the palace, which is on top of a huge hill. It's dark and glittering as if carved from obsidian. It's a lot different from Zeus's palace because it's a lot sharper. There's a lot more symmetry. It's not as organic. They go to the stable and someone takes the chariot and the horses. Hades turns to Persephone and says, "I have to leave because I have my duties, and we will speak again soon."
Well, I want to go shopping. I want some new stuff.
What? You can't just leave a kidnapping to go shopping? This isn't Florida.
Persephone doesn't know if she should be relieved or not because she just abducted her and then dropped her off somewhere. She finds the whole thing kind of off-putting. She tells Hades to wait, but Hades says patience before kissing her knuckles and then leaving. The servants want her to go inside, but she really wants to talk to Hades, but they say that their queen always keeps her word. Persephone feels that this is not reassuring. They lead her down the palace corridor into a bathing room where they wash her from head to toe. When they're done, they put scented oil in her hair, and it smells like that white flower asphodel, which is the one that Hades gave to her. The girls go to file away her calluses on her feet, and Persephone screams about this, and she says, "How will I walk?" The girl says it's not becoming of someone of her station, and Persephone says, "I need them." This doesn't matter because they keep doing it anyway, because it's their job, and then they put oil on the newly exposed skin. Persephone screams and sobs about this until her voice is like no higher than a whisper. This is so sad because this was clearly so important to her and no one cares about her opinions or what she wants. And I just feel like it's so depressing that she went from one abusive situation to another one. But it is what it is. We knew what we were getting into when we decided to read this book. I'm not angry. Persephone lays down and falls asleep immediately despite herself, and she can hear the sound of them locking her in her room before she goes to sleep. Chapter 5. Persephone has woken up and a servant has come to greet her. She says good morning. Persephone is like, "Is there even a morning here?" She says, "Our nights and days are the same. I hope you grow to like your new home." The woman is a mortal woman who is dead, and she's about middle-aged. Persephone does not dignify the comment about enjoying the new home with a response because she was fucking kidnapped here. The woman asks if she needs help getting dressed, and she says she doesn't want to be like hurting her like a dog, you know. But the queen has a strict schedule for Persephone today. Persephone asks if Hades is going to let her go, and the woman says, "I'm afraid I don't keep our queen's counsel." Persephone says that she will dress herself, but she ends up having a hard time with some of the things that like help, so she does need help anyway. She finally asks for the servant's name, and her name is Xenia, and Xenia is like weaving sapphires into her hair. Persephone cannot help but admire the quality of her new outfit, and she thinks it's such fine thread that even Athena would have wept if she laid her hands on it. Again, we can talk about the toxic ass elements of this book, but we can also appreciate that Hades wants to deck her future wife in really nice, beautiful things. We'll also talk about my take on some of these stories later because I have such an unpopular opinion, I think, but I think you guys are here for my ranting. I love you for that. Xenia says if you need anything, just like pull this rope and someone from the kitchens will come and see you. Persephone thinks to herself that this sounds better than Demeter's system, which was just yelling for servants. She tries again to ask what Hades wants of her, and Xenia says, "I couldn't say, but there's no need to be fearful." Persephone thinks only a fool would not be afraid of the queen of the underworld. Xenia finishes Persephone's hair and goes to put sandals on her, but Persephone prefers to walk barefoot. Xenia gets nervous about this and says that their queen might be upset if she's not dressed properly. It doesn't matter anyway though, because her feet are still like really tender from the scrubbing her feet, so there's no way she could walk in no shoes anyway, so she puts the shoes on. Xenia then holds up a piece of paper and starts reading the schedule to her. They're going to take a leisurely visit around the main areas. She also wants her to become aware of the areas that it's advised she doesn't go to, such as Tartarus, no, the Plain of Mourning, and the lands east of the Elysian Fields. Persephone thinks to herself that a tour like this really doesn't suit someone who's been kidnapped for only like 1 or 2 nights of sex and that she would like be released soon. It seems like way too much for that. This immediately freaks her out. She tries to think about who her allies are here. She knows that Hermes, one of the gods, will come eventually, but she knows that it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to get him alone. She can't think of anyone else who would be sympathetic to her or would also have business in the underworld. Xenia offers her some water, but Persephone refuses because eating or drinking anything from the underworld would bind her to this place forever. I do really love that our girl is assessing all of her options at any given point. Like, even though she's sheltered and she's from an abusive situation, she's not stupid. And I do love that she doesn't just like roll over and take it. Xenia asks her if she wants to begin with the asphodel fields and says that it's a pleasant ride. Persephone wonders where Hades found this servant because she is relentless. So she says very well. She also thinks that having a tour would be a good idea because the day before she was not in a position physically or mentally to be looking at all the things and knowing where things were. And if she wants to escape, she needs to know that. Again, we love a really smart bad bitch. Xenia seems genuinely relieved and says that there should be a chariot waiting for them. And she leads her down the maze of corridors until they are down at the stables, but they used a different route from the one they used the night before. Persephone is freaking out again because the sky is really depressing to her. There isn't any sun and there aren't nice things down here, and she feels like this existential dread and wonders how anyone down here can look at the sky and not feel terror. At the stable, they have two black horses waiting for them, and Persephone is feeling sassy and asks if Hades permits any other colors.
I see a red door and I want it painted black.
Xenia says that her grace has an affection for all colors, but she finds the gods take her more seriously when she is wearing black. Persephone is surprised that the gods didn't treat her seriously before. Xenia says, forgive me for saying so, but I forget how young you are sometimes. We've been waiting for you for so long. Persephone doesn't understand, but then they're off to the fields. She sees a lot of people who are not unhappy despite being deceased, and she asks Xenia who all of these people are. They are people who were neither particularly wicked nor particularly virtuous, and they work in the asphodel fields. Persephone asks, which one were you? And Xenia thinks, well, I must have done something pretty good to serve the queen of the underworld. This woman should be on some celebrities PR teams because, oh my god, she has all of the right answers. Persephone examines the local plant life, but it's very disturbing to her because she can't feel anything and they don't respond to her commands. When she's done looking at the plant life, there's a small group of mortals who have gathered around, but they're at like a respectful distance. Xenia says they have to press on because of the schedule, and Persephone says no and goes up to the mortals. They drop to their knees immediately when she approaches, and they say, we don't get visitors such as yourself all that often. It would be a great honor if you would bless our children. And she says very well, even though she's way more used to blessing crops and food items than people. She does all the children and then she blesses the adults because she can hear that they really long for it, but they're not able to ask. Everyone falls to their knees when she's done and they praise her. This settles her and she's not exactly sure why at first, but she kind of realizes that when she's above ground, people treat her with respect and care about her, but only because she's in her mother's entourage. But she also wonders if this is any different because she's only being given this courtesy because of Hades and her being perceived as Hades' guest. She asks them to please stand and asks them what they all know about Hades. They say that she's strict but fair. She says that she doesn't take favors, that rich men who die cannot cheat her, and that beggars might still hope to see the Elysian fields. Persephone says I see, but she doesn't because to her they sound almost fond of her, and she just cannot wrap her brain around that. She asks about the realm for the wicked. One person says that her cousin is there, but they always knew he would end up there because he had a terrible temper. Xenia says that Persephone does not need all the particulars. Persephone disagrees and asks what happens to the mortals there. They say it's a place of punishment, and she asks if it's forever because she knows that the Titans are there, but it hadn't occurred to her how they would be spending their time. She also can't understand why humans would be there because their lives are so brief that she can't understand what kind of wickedness they could have done to deserve that for all eternity. I think that is kind of a great point, but also at the same time I think that she's really sheltered and she doesn't know how terrible humanity can be. Humans do terrible things all the time. It's not just gods. They're the worst. They have to move on, and Persephone is not thrilled about this, but she does do it. She sees the gates where she entered where Cerberus is, and she thinks that if she escapes she's going to have to pass Cerberus, and then she would either have to take the boat or get the guy who runs the boat to give her a ride, but he probably won't do that. So she wonders if she can overpower him and take the boat by force. Even though they're seeing more stuff, Persephone asks to be taken back to the palace. Xenia thinks about arguing, it's pretty clear on her face, but she doesn't. She says of course, and they turn around to go back to the palace. When they get back, Xenia asks if she wants to see the Hall of Judgment, garment. And Persephone says, no, I don't want to see any of it. I'm not a tourist. I'm not a guest. I'm a prisoner, and you should stop pretending otherwise. She then starts to walk down the halls. Xenia tells her to wait and that her room is not ready yet. It was scheduled for cleaning. Persephone says she doesn't care and she keeps going back to her room. She opens the door and there are a ton of servants there. They all turn to stare at her. Spread out on the bed is like this absolutely beautiful garment. It's like a beautiful purple with golden embroidery. She thinks that it's the loveliest thing she's ever seen. There are also patterns that are like beads and like other things that are of flowers and plants that the servants are fussing over. There are also more servants there polishing jewelry and lacing a pair of sandals. She asks what all of this is and the girl with the sandals stands up and says, beg your pardon, it's for your nuptials, and then everyone else in the room gasps. I don't know how they thought they would be able to hide this from her, but go off, I guess. She says, I beg your pardon, and start having some vertigo. Xenia tells all the servants to get out and they do. Prior to that moment, Persephone had assumed that Hades wanted what all the other gods wanted from a young maiden, a fleeting pleasure to be taken and just as quickly forgotten. That would have been terrible enough, true, but as soon as Hades tired of her, she would have been able to return to the surface and see the sun once more. This chiton though, these jewels, the Stephane, a wedding would bind her for eternity no matter if their marriage was happy or not. Zeus could not free himself of Hera, as powerful as he was. If they wed, how would Persephone ever be free of Hades? She began to cry, shedding tears that she could not afford to lose. She could not stay here forever. She simply could not. Reign in the underworld and never see the sun again, never dance barefoot over dew-kissed grass, never frolic in the streams of sweet water so crisp and clear that one could count every pebble in the riverbed. Xenia walked up to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. Please don't be frightened. She may seem cruel, but she is a just ruler. So again, this is toxic as fuck and she should be able to pick who she wants to marry. But can we talk about how in the context of Greek mythology, she assumed that this whole thing would be a kidnapping and just an assault and then being tossed aside, and that she wouldn't be valued in any way at all. And Hades just kind of pulled an Uno reverse and says, actually, I do want to marry you. I think you're so incredibly important and I think you're the greatest. Again, there is no consent. This isn't great. But I think this might actually right now be a great time to talk about the controversial opinion that I have. So in instances like this, like Beauty and the Beast, for example, I always find it weird when the main character, who has had pretty much a terrible life overall. It depends on what version of Beauty and the Beast we're talking about, but in the original she had sisters who were literally terrible to her. Her life was not great. Her father had lost a lot of his riches. I always find it so odd that not a single one of these girls goes, oh, thank God. I am so glad I don't have to worry about anything. There's a nice palace here. People do all these nice things for me. I'm being waited on hand and foot. I live in a big area and my significant other is typically so busy that I rarely see this person. I understand in these stories it's usually a larger conversation about consent. However, I do just want one character who is thrilled by this situation. I just want one where she is like, oh, thank God I am trapped here with this super hot husband or wife or whoever, and I have all of these nice things and I don't have to worry about my terrible life anymore. I get to be happy. That's all I'm asking for, is just one narrative like this. If you guys know any sapphic ones like this, please let me know. Also, Xenia saying that she's a just ruler. What does that have to do with being married to her? That doesn't have anything to do with that. Just because you're good at ruling something doesn't mean you'll be a good spouse, especially not if you're a Greek god. Persephone tells Xenia to get the hell out, and she does. When she's gone, Persephone picks something up and throws it and shatters it, which fair. That's fair. Persephone tries to pray to her mom even though she's never done this before, and she also has never been separated from her mother for any significant amount of time, but she can't think of anyone else to pray to or anyone else who will be looking for her. She says that she wants her mother's forgiveness and that she should have listened to her and she should have been more weary because now she's been kidnapped, and she should have tried harder to keep her favor. It makes me really sad that she just victim blames herself even though this whole thing is just a nightmare situation. Persephone kind of knows that her mother probably won't hear her and that even if she does, she can't really do anything because this is Hades' realm. A virtuous human woman in her position might have killed herself, but Persephone wasn't even sure how that could be done. And besides, a successful suicide would bind her to the underworld forever, putting her eternally under Hades' command. She could mutilate herself, make herself so hideous that no one would want her, but most wounds of the gods could be healed. So I've complained recently that sometimes dark romances just like forget about the dark elements and don't care anymore, but holy hell was that dark. I feel so bad for her, honestly. She kind of wraps her arms around herself and she knows she needs to survive until someone comes for her, and she really has to just believe that someone will come for her. Chapter 6. She wakes up to a sound in the middle of the night and she thinks to call for her mother, but then she realizes she's not home and she's not with her mother. Genuinely, upsetting. She puts sandals on and she goes to her door, and her door does open. It's not locked. Everything outside of her room is quiet and she can't see servants or guards, and she wonders if something has happened. She thinks to herself as much as she wants to just leave. She can't just run away and leave. She grabs some jewelry in case she needs to bribe some servants, because she doesn't know if servants and like humans still care about riches in the underworld, but it's worth a shot. She grabs a dagger on the side of the table, which is never explained. Why does she have a dagger? Why would you give your kidnapped victim a dagger? Whatever. And she puts on a belt that has the sheath for it on it. She doesn't know if she can even use the weapon because she's never even raised her voice in anger. Even though she's deciding to leave, she thinks that something isn't right because nobody locked her in. She wonders if someone's conscience had gotten the better of them, but she doesn't believe that. Even though she thinks this might be a trap, she still has to take the opportunity. So she goes to the kitchen first, and then when people aren't looking and they aren't there, she steals some food. Even at the stable, there's nobody but the horses, and she thinks this is super weird. She grabs one of the horses named Alistair. She hops right on his back to leave. While they're traveling, she cannot figure out where everyone is, and she's trying not to let her doubts plague her. When she gets to the gate, Cerberus is lying down, and then his ears kind of cock towards her, toward the sound of her and the horse. She takes the sausages that she stole. She makes sure there's 3 equal-sized portions and throws them to each of Cerberus's heads, and he's very happy about this. She is able to go around him, get to the river, and try to take a boat, but it's not the boat of that guy who ferries people back and forth. She gets on the boat and starts paddling, but after a very short distance, it stops as though it's stuck. She looks in the water and tries to kind of like push, but the boat is just resisting her. She doesn't want to get in the water, but she doesn't think she has a choice, so she does, and she gets in the water. There is immediately a problem because the water is cold, but she dives down and figures out what's blocking the boat. She thinks she's found the problem, so then she comes up for air and she cuts the cord that was holding the boat in place. But when she does that, something grabs her ankles, and then she's just dragged beneath the water. She is trying to fight it, but there are like bodies surrounding her. It's the dead, and their touch is all cold and clammy. It's disgusting. It's just gross overall. She's trying to stay conscious while avoiding ingesting the water. Again, she doesn't want to be trapped in the underworld. They're trying to kiss her a little bit, have their fingers on her, which is gross. She tries to get the dagger so she can get them away from her, but it's not working. She needs to breathe though. They're running their fingers through her hair, and she's worried that this is just going to be her grave. Chapter 7. Persephone feels strong arms grabbing her and taking her out of the water. She coughs up a mouthful of water that she's trying really hard not to swallow. It's Hades, and Hades takes her to the shore and lays her on the grass. Hades is still holding her, and even though Persephone wants to back away, they're both just holding each other, and she like can't because she's so shaken up. She needs to feel something alive. She rests her head on Hades' shoulder while listening to her heart because she really does need to feel something alive, because again, the plants can't talk to her. She starts crying. She then eventually tries to wiggle free from Hades' grasp, but she can't because Hades is just tightening her grip. Hades tells her to hush and that she is safe, which Persephone finds laughable. Persephone realizes after examining what happened from every angle in her brain real quick that there's no mistake here, and Hades says, "What's wrong?" She says, "You knew I was going to leave, and you knew what I would find here." She thinks that Hades must have planned for it, and Hades admits it right away, as though she were like insulted by the suggestion that something could happen in her realm that she wasn't aware of, which is really funny to me. Persephone is pissed and says, "Well, I almost drowned." Hades says, "I've seen more than a few drowned souls. You weren't anywhere close to joining their ranks, okay?" She's like, "I would know. I'm the profesh here." Can you see Ginger's ears? Say hi. Persephone then tries to take the dagger to stab Hades, I think, but Hades just takes hold of her wrists and says, "What are you trying to do, Kore?" which is her childhood name. Persephone is able to poke her just a little bit, and like a single drop of gold blood comes out. Hades grabs the blade immediately and then just wipes it clean in the grass. She says, "Try again. Perhaps your luck will find you this time." Hades is like smiling at her a little bit, and even though she does some terrible things, I still find her a bit fun, especially in instances like this. Again, I feel we can have a better time with this because it is Greek gods doing Greek god nonsense. We're not surprised, we're not shocked, we're having a good time. Persephone decides she's going to run away, but she continues barefoot even though it's really muddy and gross. She doesn't know where she's gonna go, but she can't stand to be in Hades' presence any longer. Hades calls after her. That doesn't work, however. She gets up to her with the horses and asks her what's wrong. The horse almost tramples her, the one that she took, and Persephone asks what's wrong with the horse. Hades saves her and says, "Are you trying to get yourself killed? I'm kind of flattered." I love the dead joke. That is so funny to me. What, you're gonna die so you can spend all eternity with me? kind of hot. Persephone says she doesn't understand because the horse was so docile before, and Hades asks, where are we even gonna go? Persephone says that she doesn't belong here, and Hades says that you will learn to appreciate the beauty of this place someday. If you must, then take me as your mistress. If that's what you desire, I will go to you every time you visit the surface, but please don't condemn me to live here. Oh, Persephone, is this world truly so awful that you would consign yourself to live such a life without the protection of my claim, to suffer the predations of your father and others of his ilk? I have been doing just fine without your protection. Hades gave her a look, then shook her head. Your father had plans for you. Demeter would not have had the power to intervene. I think that this is interesting in the context of Hades being portrayed as a woman, because she understands exactly what happens to women in this fucked up patriarchal ancient Greek god situation. So even though we all know that this is like wrong and pretty fucked up, and it kind of makes it a little bit worse because she's a woman, she still thinks that this might be the kind of situation for Persephone. And unfortunately, in the context of Greek mythology, I fear that she's right. Persephone can't deny that her mother can't do anything about her getting married. Persephone says, we are not wed, and Hades says, we will be, and Persephone says, you haven't even asked me. Hades gives her a lopsided smile and then asks her in total sincerity. Persephone says no immediately. Hades grabs her anyway though and pulls her in tightly. Persephone is trying to free herself, but Hades just grabs her wrists with her other hand. She says, it does not matter what you say, daughter of Demeter, we will be wed, and you will rule beside me as you were born to do. And then she kisses her neck and Persephone screams. Honestly, fair reaction. This is kind of crazy. Hey, this is where stuff gets absolutely batshit. I need you to know. This is when it starts going off the rails. Hades flips Persephone onto the grass. Her face is against the ground. Hades starts tearing her clothing off. I'm not joking. This is the kind of thing we're in for. Great. She uses the clothing that she ripped to tie Persephone's wrists behind her back and to tie her ankles. Persephone is struggling the entire time, but it's not working. She can't free herself. Persephone is almost completely naked now except for her downstairs triangle, and she reiterates again that they are not wed. Hades says, no, but don't worry, I only want to take a look at you.
That's the sound of the police!
I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Again, I still don't mind this that much in the context of the story. I'm not raging the entire time like I would about some other books. Hades is looking at her body and says, you took something of mine, didn't you? You stole from me. Where is it? Persephone says that the jewelry fell and it's somewhere in the marsh. Hades says, well, I'll take something of equal value from you then. And she takes out the dagger. I love it here. It's the dagger that Persephone took. Hades says, at least you didn't try to leave unarmed. And then she traces a boob with the tip of the knife. Nothing breaks skin. Persephone can't bear to look, but can't bear to look away. We are gay and toxic in this house. Hades uses the knife to cut off her underwear. Persephone says, you said you would only look. She says, I know, but decides to touch a boob anyway. We are not wed, she ground out between her teeth. I know. I am all the things the legends say I am. Merciful, Persephone tried, as though Hades had a better nature that was vulnerable to flattery. Not today. There is some thigh touching. She swipes at the cookie and then licks her fingers with Persephone's arousal on it. She then asks which one of Persephone's nymphs have tasted her, and Persephone says none. Persephone tries again to say some stuff and argue, and Hades says, I know, we're not wed. She grabs Persephone's underwear and puts it in her belt. Okay then. She then picks up a still bound Persephone and then throws her over her shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Persephone is still worried she's about to be assaulted. It doesn't happen yet though, so yay, I guess. They get in the saddle and Hades is holding her by her waist. You're taking us back like this? Persephone asked. If you would prefer me to leave bite marks all over you first, there is still time for that. Persephone swung her ankles and managed to kick Hades' shin, bruising her own heels in the process. I'm naked. Hopefully she has a humiliation cake? Hades rolls her eyes but does take off her cape and drapes it over Persephone, but it doesn't exactly cover anything. It pretty much covers like torso area. They don't talk for the entire ride back, and I mean, what would you talk about with your kidnapper? They get back and there is a groom waiting for them for the horses, and he's kind of freaking out because Persephone is like naked in front of him. He is told to give the horse a treat because the horse has been through a lot tonight. Persephone asks if she's going to be untied now because she can walk. Hades is like, why should I let you? You're probably just gonna run again. And I also really don't want to deal with this, and I don't think I can restrain myself next time. Yay. If that had been restraint, Persephone didn't want to know what Hades would do to her once they were married and her virtue became a distant memory. It startled her to find herself imagining a life after marriage as though she had already given up on the idea of an escape or rescue, not more than a day after her arrival fails. She blamed it on the underworld itself, which was dreary enough to make anyone lose hope. I feel bad that she's kind of giving in to just even fantasizing about this, but at the same time, her life has been bad, so I can't really say that I'm surprised. Persephone gets swung over Hades' shoulder again, and they're walking into the palace. Persephone finds this deeply humiliating. When they get there to like her room, Xenia is there, and Hades tells Xenia not to allow Persephone to run around again, and that she wants her well rested for the next day. She then leaves. As soon as Hades is gone, Persephone demands to be untied immediately, and Xenia does do that. She throws off the cape immediately because she does not want to touch anything that belongs to Hades. She then gets in the bath because she cannot deal with this right now. Then she crawls into bed so she can try to pretend this never happens, but Xenia sits at the foot of the bed to just watch her. Persephone says, "You don't need to do that, just lock me in like you did before." Xenia says yes, but does not move. Persephone wraps a pillow around her head and closes her eyes. She has a hard time forcing herself to relax, particularly because she can hear breathing at the other end of the bed. She does eventually fall into some kind of unconsciousness. Chapter 8. It's the next day, we're getting ready for the wedding. Persephone is not having a good time, as is to be expected. If you're wondering where the romance is,
Take a look around. Do you see her anywhere? News flash. You're not gonna.
I just mentioned this because there isn't like a very overt romance in my opinion. I don't feel like we see the characters spend a lot of time together or feel Persephone falling in love back. I feel like these books either have no dark elements or they have no romance. She could scarcely pray for her marriage to be blessed as a bride should. Instead, she prayed for deliverance and compassion. Failing that, she prayed for Hades' ruination. The goddess heard her. Persephone saw no sign. While we don't have a lot of romance in this book, I do like Persephone a lot because she doesn't just roll over and decide she's gonna make the best of it. I know I said I wanted someone like that, but I mean, like, I think there's room to want both. She feels like a real person who is actually furious about being kidnapped and being forced into a marriage. She prays at the temple and then the servants lead her out and they all get her dressed up for the wedding. She goes through all of this dissociating and convinced this isn't happening to her. I really feel for her, I really do. Xenia is finishing her makeup and outfit and is just thrilled about the wedding. "You'll make a beautiful consort," Xenia said. Persephone's kind mood vanished. She longed to run her fingers through her hair, rip out all the accoutrements, stamp her feet, and insist on being taken back home. The only thing stopping her was the knowledge that such actions would be futile. Every denizen of the underworld obeyed Hades, and Hades, it seemed, had no intention of letting her go. "I don't wish to marry her." Xenia fussed around, placing a saffron-dyed veil over Persephone's hair, delicately draping the yellow fabric as not to snag on any of the jewels in her stuffing. It's normal for a bride to have jitters on her special day. Had they not heard her, Persephone thought that all the screaming upon her arrival had provided sufficient indication, but it seemed everyone was conveniently ignoring the fact that she had been dragged here against her will. "I never chose Hades," Persephone tried again. Xenia glanced at her with sympathy and she patted Persephone's shoulder. "Most brides don't choose, dear. Be glad your father permitted such a fine match." This is so sad, but at the same time it is Greek gods. I just feel bad for her on like every level. Like I feel bad for her on every level, but at the same time I can understand the other characters' perspectives. I think one of the reasons that the Hades and Persephone myth keeps being retold is because it's sadly one of the nicest god interactions that has to do with like marriage or sex or anything, which is super fucked up because it includes kidnapping. Persephone is feeling sick and tired of this. She asks if they will be done soon and they say it won't be long now. After they're done, Xenia asks the other servants to leave so she can give Persephone the sex talk. She's worried that her mother didn't tell her and she needs to know how the sex will go. Persephone is upset about this and says that she does, but again she's upset because this talk is being had with a servant who reports directly to Hades. And I really do have to compliment the author because Persephone really does think things through and she does think about the implications of things. Again, she's sheltered but not stupid and it's a depiction I greatly enjoy. Xenia tries to say, okay, but like after the feast there won't be time to talk about it, but Persephone does not want to talk about this. Why is she doing this? Xenia had clearly braced herself for a different sort of question. She opened her mouth, closed it again, and then spoke. Every hardworking ruler needs a good wife by their side. It was as though Persephone were yelling down a deep chasm and nothing was coming back save for the twisted echo of her own voice. Not everyone takes that wife by deception. Xenia smiled sadly, giving her a pitying glance. She wasn't so indecorous to mention Persephone's father, but they were both thinking it. Fine, the rest of the gods were not paragons of morality. Everyone knew that. It didn't make it right. Again, we are acknowledging that all these other gods are doing terrible things, but what's happening to Persephone isn't right. Persephone says, let's get this over with. When she leaves, the servants are following her, but Xenia is leading at the front, and they're led to the Great Hall. Persephone is already bothered by her elaborate, heavy hairstyle and wonders if she'll be expected to dance, and she really can't imagine pretending to be happy. and have this crazy hairstyle. If this were a proper wedding, Demeter might have been the one to perform such an intimate function. Persephone pressed her lips together, resolving not to weep as the doors swung inward, revealing their wedding party to the crowd. It's really sad that she has to miss out on so many traditions because she's in the underworld, even though we all know that her mother would never be supportive and never approve of any wedding, no matter what it was, and that she would be making like snide comments the entire time. It's still so sad that she thinks about these things and she's missing these things because her mother isn't here. It looks like just about everybody in the underworld has shown up for the wedding. Persephone doesn't recognize anyone but Hades, who she thinks she detests more than anyone. She's really going through it. Hades watches Persephone as she's going down the aisle, and I love moments like this in books and movies, including when they talk about it in 27 Dresses, about it being like their favorite part of a wedding. But Persephone does not feel the same and is just ignoring her, as she should. When she gets there, Hades starts to make an announcement. Friends and family, we are gathered here today to witness my marriage to the beautiful Persephone, daughter of Zeus and Demeter, Hades said. Persephone was astonished when the crowd cheered as if they were attending a comedy and not a solemn act of matrimony. Someone even called out, "It's about time," to which Hades only laughed, instead of striking down the person who dared speak as Ares might have done. "Yes, you have all been very patient, but the wait is over. Now you shall have another queen, truly worthy of your devotion." The crowd roared with approval and Persephone's stomach fell. Did no one see her for what she was, a captive and not a willing participant in all of this merrymaking? She looked at those around her, trying to meet their eyes, but no one seemed to see the despair she felt. It's clear that Hades has known she was going to marry Persephone for a long time. I feel like if we had included some of that pining, it would have made this book even better. I wish we had cut out some of the courting stuff with Hephaestus, or at least had like cut it down so that we could have gotten more actual romance. I actually would have been fine with this book being a little bit longer too. Persephone sees the god Thanatos, the personification of death, and she mouths at him to help her, but he does not do it. He just stares at her. I admire her for trying, but we all know that everyone down here is on Hades' side. Hades asks for her hand and she gives it to her. Thanatos slices both of their palms and then they do like a blood mingling thing. I always hate this in books. It feels so unsanitary to me. Persephone is not a fan of this either and says this is not how they do things on the surface. Hades says there will be plenty of time for her to learn their customs. "Is it your custom to abduct brides without a blessing?" She had raised her voice, but she didn't care who heard her. Hades seemed immune to censure in any case. "This wedding was blessed," Hades said. "By whom? Not Demeter. By your father?" Persephone's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to deny it, to call Hades a liar, but she could feel deep in her bones that she was telling the truth. Persephone keeps forgetting that her dad is the most important god of all time, but since he's an absent father, I can hardly blame her. Thanatos ties a cord around their hands and says, "What I've joined today, let no god or goddess tear asunder." Hades promises that she will be well loved here, not only by her subjects, but more importantly by her. Hades lifts off her veil and says, "You look like a vision, but you're missing something," and then takes a gold chain off of herself and puts it on Persephone. The subjects gather around them and Persephone wonders if her mother knew about this, but thinks that she didn't because she counseled her to stay away from Hades. Now that she knows that Zeus has blessed the union, she really doesn't think anyone would dare come and try and save her. All of the guests are requested to take their seats. Thanatos and Hades have a quick private conversation. We don't know about what. I don't know if we ever find out. She and Hades are seated next to each other and they have like a ton of food brought in. She is very hungry, but she can't do anything or she'll be trapped here. Hades asks if there's something she would prefer to be brought from the kitchens, which is thoughtful, but you should have asked that before the wedding. We prefer foresight. We prefer some planning, some obvious pining that makes it clear you've been thinking about her and wondering what she thinks about. "Xenia tells me you have fasted all day. Surely you must be hungry." Persephone's stomach rumbled as if on cue. Her cheeks colored, but she kept her lips firmly pressed together. Hades frowned. "Speak to me, wife." The muscle ticked in Persephone's cheek. "You have no right to call me that. Let us not fight over words on this blessed day." Persephone then, "Are you so determined to refuse my hospitality?" "I don't wish to stay here, you know that," Persephone said, trying not to watch all of the diners digging into their food with gusto. "You have not eaten since your arrival?" Hades asked, her words clipped. Persephone shook her head. She hadn't dared. One sip and it would bind her here forever. Hades gestured at the spread before them. "Nothing at our table has been grown here. You may partake of it freely." She beckoned a servant to her side. "Bring me that plate," she said, pointing at a platter laden with figs on another table. I'm glad we're having this conversation now so that Persephone can eat. Even though she can survive without eating, it's not pleasant. Hades has a servant bring 2 figs and says, "Which one is from the surface?" Persephone doesn't want to play this game, but Hades is like, "Humor me." Persephone can't feel anything when she touches the fig from the underworld, but she can feel a lot of things from the one from the overworld. Sometimes I feel like it's almost like she forgets she has powers, but I do think this is partially because her mother diminishes everything she does. Hades asks her to eat and she does. She thinks to herself that she hadn't thought that the fruit from the underworld would feel different to her, but it makes sense that it does.
Yeah, no shit, honey!
"Our marriage places you under my protection and proves to the other gods that you are mine. fine. It could not be delayed any longer. But binding yourself to the underworld is a choice you will make for me and only for me. What kind of choice was that? I'll never taste of your food nor drink your wine, Persephone said. A small smile played about Hades' lips. We shall see. I do love that she's pretty convinced she can change Persephone's mind. She's kind of fine in some moments. The only thing that would make her better in my eyes is if there was more pining and she was a butch. Hades keeps putting things on Persephone's plate and Persephone is not so proud that she's not just gonna eat it. She's too hungry for that. Hades was a different goddess in the underworld, more relaxed than she'd ever been above ground. She chatted to her guests, jested with them, her pale cheeks flushed with color, her lips curved into a smile more often than not. Her pleasant countenance hid a dark heart. Persephone could not forget the way she'd been manhandled in the overworld, nor the way Hades had humiliated her the other night and enjoyed it no less. Was she as bad as Zeus with his endless philandering? Persephone ought to hope that was the case, as it would mean that Hades would pay her less mind. But she didn't think she would be so fortunate. Knowing how gods loved gossip, she would have heard rumors. It's so sad though that Hades is like the best we have to work with in the Greek pantheon overall. The only infidelity story that we know about with Hades is about Minth. However, there are multiple versions of the story where Minth is actually a past lover who is angry that Hades no longer sleeps with her because he's so in love with his wife. They get a bunch of well-wishers. Hades introduces them all. Persephone is determined to have no ties to anyone here, so she's not trying that hard. When there's like a lack of visitors, she takes this opportunity to ask all of the burning questions that she's had. I'm glad she didn't just keep all of these burning questions inside because main characters like that drive me crazy. She asked Hades why she left her door unlocked the other night and if it was just for sport. Hades says that that was an enjoyable side effect. Persephone says that she was humiliated and asks if that's how she wants her consort to be remembered. Hades says no, but no one of importance saw her. She says that she needed to see that trying to escape was pointless. Persephone says that she will never stop trying to escape her, and Hades says, then you are bound to be disappointed. Hades' confidence, her conceit, was just as bad as any god's, and not at all becoming of someone of the gentler sex. Yay, gender essentialism! We're going through it though because these are Greek gods. I expect nothing but the worst from them. Hades asks if she wants to dance and Persephone says no. Hades goes and dances with the other partygoers alone. Everyone is super excited that Hades is dancing with them, stares at her dancing like someone who is totally not gay.
I'm not gay, but if I was, I would want equal rights. I'm not gay, but if I were, I would marry who I like.
Persephone can't bear to watch long, so she goes outside and vomits up half of her dinner. Xenia follows her outside and asks if there's anything that she can get for her. Persephone says she's fine, and Xenia says every bride is nervous. I'm not every bride, and the ruler of many will not be any old boorish groom. Persephone laughed. How do you know that? I would trust her with my own daughter. It occurred to Persephone that she knew nothing of the woman's life before her death. You have children? 4 who live to maturity, praise the gods, and many descendants after them. You're not my mother, Persephone said. Of course not. I would never dream to put myself beside the generous Demeter. But if I may offer you some comfort while you are bereft of mother's counsel, then I will do whatever is in my power to guide you. Persephone placed a hand over her throbbing forehead. You can't help me. No one can except the one who won't. She may not be her mother, but she's still somehow a better mother than Demeter. Persephone isn't ready to hear that, but it's unfortunately true. A servant comes and tells her that Hades has requested her presence. Persephone thinks about refusing, but then thinks about being embarrassed in front of all these people, so she just goes anyway. Hades tells her it's time for Persephone to depart. She announces as much to the larger group, who starts snickering because they know that the sex comes next. She tells all of them to continue celebrating. They're just giggling like a bunch of middle schoolers. Humanity truly never changes. She tells them to continue celebrating. She turns to Persephone and kisses her knuckles, telling her she will see her soon. Persephone goes with Xenia. There is no procession or ritual blessings. She is a bit grateful because she thinks then she won't have to have the shame of her mother not carrying the torch, but it's just another reminder that she's missing out on what should be her really special day, and she didn't really get everything she thought she would in a wedding. Chapter 9. Xenia and the other 2 servants herd Persephone into her room, and they undo her insane hairdo. They comb her hair and take off her wedding outfit. She is a little sad taking off the outfit because it's so beautiful. She gets changed into a plain white outfit. Xenia asks if there's anything that she needs, and when Persephone says no, they all leave. They all get the hell out. Persephone thinks about running away again because they didn't lock the door, but she sees no point and will be even more humiliating because she would be dragged past every one of those wedding party goers. She crawls into bed and pulls the covers over like all the way up to her chin, and she falls asleep for a little bit. She wakes up to Hades sitting next to her. Hades remarks that she sleeps like the dead, except the dead don't actually sleep all that peacefully. She asks if it's a talent of hers. Persephone says she's always been a deep sleeper, and Hades is like, if you can even call that sleep. I personally wouldn't call it sleep. Persephone thought it was the same for everyone, but it really is more like dissociating. Persephone says Hades' schedule is crazy and she probably actually needs to get some more sleep. Hades says, yeah, there's always something demanding my attention, but not tonight. She offers Persephone some wine, and Persephone does decide to take some. She is very nervous about the bedding. She almost wished Hades had taken her in her sleep so she didn't have to deal with the consequences of her marriage in her waking hours. That is so sad. I feel so bad for her. I genuinely do kind of want to fight Hades off for her. I feel so bad.
Yep, sometimes I gotta beat the ladies off with a stick. Back, woman! Back, I said!
Hades helps her take some sips of her wine because she is shaking so much that she has spilled like a third of the cup all over herself. Hades leans in to kiss her and Persephone freezes. Persephone says they don't have to tonight, and Hades says, well, the marriage isn't binding or official unless we've consummated, so we can all see where this is going. Persephone tries to bring up that Hera has not blessed the union, so therefore it is not official, and Hades says, well, Zeus approved it and Hera has no reason to go against him or me. Persephone brings up her mother again, like anyone cares about her mother. Hades says that her mother will accept the union in time, as will she. Persephone says never. Hades says we'll see about that. We're now just gonna skip over this because this is a rape scene. It's dark romance. It was in the warnings. We're not upset. It's a fact. I will just go over the highlights. Persephone tries to dissociate and go into the dreaming earth, as she calls it. Hades thinks that her gifts are interesting, but says that like when you're around me, you're not gonna be doing that. Persephone says she's not sure if she can even stop it, and Hades says, what has your mother been doing to you? Which is a great question, and we will learn more about it. Hades says she's gonna have to learn how to control it. She says every time that Persephone does it, she will hurt her. Yikes. She gets told to hold her hands up above her head, but she doesn't want to do that, so Hades slaps her. We are wildin' out here. The only reason I'm not furious about this book, again, is because they're Greek gods and not humans, and it's what it is. She ends up tying up Persephone's wrists. Hades forces her to receive oral. Persephone does enjoy it, but she doesn't want it, just to be clear. Hades brings her more wine. She unties her wrists. You remained present, Hades said. It pleased me, not from lack of wanting. Even better, to desire something and resist the urge is the type of discipline that civilizations are built upon. Why don't you resist your urges? Hades stilled, and she wondered if she'd gone too far, but then Hades smiled. Why should I? I have been waiting a long time for you, Persephone, Demeter's daughter. I will not be denied a moment longer. I felt weird about the tit for tat kind of attitude, like, gods do it, so why can't I? Well, how about nobody acts like a complete douche? How about that? What if no gender was a fucking asshole? Hades kisses her again and Persephone slaps her. She tries to slap her some more, but Hades catches her wrists. My chain suits you, as do bruises. You are a degenerate. If I were a god, would you say such a thing? One man's sin is another man's pleasure. Persephone remains silent. If Hades had been a god, Persephone would not have been compelled to eavesdrop upon her at Zeus's party all those years ago, and perhaps she would not have aroused Hades' interest. Surely that would have been the better outcome for both of them. I have caught you, Persephone, and I intend to keep you. It will be easier for you to accept that, Hades smiled, her eyes dark as the depths of Tartarus, but your struggle is just as sweet as your eventual surrender will be. Please remember my note about all the weird gender shit. Hades ties her up and then assaults her with her fingers and then a strap. Oh, this wasn't right, not even for a degenerate. Women were only meant to use these when their husbands were at war or during the Dionysia. Any other usage was ... decadent. She had no idea how Hades could derive pleasure from such an act, but it was clear that she was pleased nonetheless. She spoke softly with filthy words of encouragement that Persephone had never heard, not even at the bustling ports of Attica.
Now, we don't have time to unpack all of that.
Persephone does finish. Again, she didn't want it, and Hades did not listen to her saying no. Persephone then cries while Hades holds her. She wants to escape into dissociating, but Hades stops her because she doesn't like it. If only it was that easy. I'm dissociating nearly 24/7. They say goodnight to each other, and Persephone has a hard time falling asleep because Hades is touching her. Chapter 10. She wakes up shaking and Hades is still sleeping beside her. She sneaks out of bed and pours herself another glass of wine and drinks it very quickly. That is fair. She wants a bath because she feels gross after being assaulted, which by the way is very normal for a lot of survivors. She fills up a water basin and then scrubs her skin until it's raw and irritated. Hades is up and she comes up and wraps her arms around her and holds her from behind. I thought Hypnos had blessed me, but then I saw I was not dreaming, Hades said, burying her face in Persephone's hair. Persephone remained as still and straight as a column. I thought you were asleep. Hades kissed a line from her elbow to her neck. How could I sleep when my bride has need of me? She then helps like wash her. We're gonna get into it, but if this had been consensual, then this could have been kind of considered aftercare, but it's not, so it's just like another opportunity to push Persephone's boundaries. Persephone tells her that she's already washed. Hades says you've missed a spot and then cups between her legs. Persephone is getting aroused again, apparently.
But then
he took his shirt off and I went, like I actually had, like, my body had a reaction with those tentacles.
I don't need to know about that. You keep that to yourself.
Persephone tells Hades to let her go, and she doesn't. Persephone tries to hit Hades in the head with a water pitcher, but misses. Hades says, "Are you trying to seduce me?" And you know what? Relatable. Persephone says she's disgusting, and Hades says, "You might say so, but your body says otherwise." Barf. Hades starts to finger her, and Persephone says, "Please don't, I'm sore." She says she will do anything else, and that's how we get Persephone giving Hades head. Again, nothing about this is consensual, but we didn't really expect it to be. It was oddly gratifying to know that, unschooled though she was, she could have this effect upon the Lady of the Damned. Persephone wanted to tell herself that she had done as she was told, nothing more, but then why did she feel conflicted about seeing Hades so vulnerable? She is enjoying it in her own way, and the longer we go, the closer to consent we get in this book. They get back into bed and she tries to sleep again. Chapter 11. Persephone wakes up and it's morning this time. Hades is already up and getting dressed for work. Persephone pretends to be asleep still, and Hades kisses her forehead and tucks a stray piece of hair behind her ear before leaving. As soon as she's gone, Persephone jumps up and she bars the door with her dressing table. It won't keep a determined person from entering, but it will buy her some time. She washes herself again before getting dressed. In the mirror, she sees all of her bruises have healed except for the hickey that Hades gave her. Xenia scooches the door open and says that she brought breakfast. Persephone asks if it's just her, and she says yes, so then Persephone hesitantly moves the thing out of the door. Xenia comes in with the food. She tries to use her plant powers on the tomato, but her powers don't really work well down here. Xenia clears her throat and Persephone asks what she wants. Xenia says, "I have your directives for the day," and Persephone says, "Has the underworld never heard of a honeymoon?" Xenia says that Hades wants her to become more familiar with her subjects and receive their wedding gifts. Persephone says if she wants me to do something, she can tell me her damn self, and no one is my subject because this isn't my home. She starts leaving and Xenia follows her. When she's walking, a ton of servants are greeting her. Persephone hates it. She tells Xenia she's going for a walk and she doesn't need an escort, but Xenia does not leave. She tries again and Xenia says, "I've been ordered to follow you around." Persephone says she doesn't care and that she's ordering her to stop following her around. Xenia says, "You don't have that kind of authority," which does make sense to me. Persephone says fine before she goes to the stable, grabs a horse and says, "Keep up if you can." She goes all the way on this horse until they get to Tartarus, the place, you know, where all the bad people go. Xenia begs her not to go and Persephone says, "I need to see what's in there." A giant named Codus says she can't be here because she's living. Persephone says she has Hades' favor and shows the necklace. He lets her through but says that Xenia can't come through. Xenia begs her not to go long because it's not safe there. Persephone says, "Don't worry, nothing can hurt me," before she leaves. She goes down, down, down. It's like an elevator-like thing. Doesn't work super well. When they get there, she can hear a lot of screaming, pained groans, crying. She thinks that she shouldn't have come here, and it's almost like everybody tried to warn you. As she goes down the walkways, she starts to see people and they start begging her to help them. She hurries past all of them until she hears someone say daughter. She goes to see who it is, and it is Kronos. And if you don't know who Kronos is, he is the father in mythology of Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, and he ate them. It's a whole thing. When he sees her, he realizes she's his granddaughter. He scares her and then he laughs. Tee-hee-hee. He asks which one of his grandkids she is, and she says that she's Persephone and says which her parents are. He says he should have torn Zeus's head off when he swallowed him, and I'm inclined to agree. He asks her what they say about him in the overworld, and she tells him. He asks if she has any food or drinks, and she shakes her head no. He asks what good she is then, and says she reeks of Hades. He asks her to ask Hades if the accommodations better since he's been here long enough. She says she will ask, and he makes fun of her for the idea of asking instead of being like a proud grandchild of him. I mean, her wife is your daughter, so she kind of like outranks seniority. It's actually never explained if they're actually related like they are in real Greek mythology, but Kronos remarks that she is also a prisoner here just as he is. She says that they are nothing alike and that she will be free soon, and she'll be free as soon as Hades grows weary of her.
Sure, Jan.
He starts laughing at her. "Oh girl, how young you must be. How fortunate to be so naive. You wear Hades' favor and yet you know her so little." Persephone's hand went briefly to her neck. "I'd had no chance to know her. I wasn't exactly courted. In my days, the chase was the courtship. You saw a girl you wanted, you kept her in your bed until she was round with child and no longer had the strength to flee. That practice was alive and well. It was a hard tradition to break, seeing as the gods were unwilling to change their ways. But she hoped that Hades could be different. It was stupid. She ought to have run whilst she still could. Nothing nothing has changed, Persephone said. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. That's not true. Oh, Kronos leered at her. And who would you be without Hades' favor, Demeter's daughter? Nobody. All you have to offer is what lies between your legs. Persephone bit her tongue, grateful for the bars and for the distance between them. She would not ever have dreamed of striking an unarmed old man before today. Hades will never let you go. Not after what she did to have you. But don't despair, girl. If it's freedom you want, then you shall have it, Kronos said. What did she do? Persephone asked. Help me and I'll tell you. How? Kronos dropped his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Free me and free yourself. We shall crush this prison and its jailers along with it. She thinks about his offer briefly, but thinks that it would be stupid to betray everyone in Olympus and everyone on Earth just because she wants to get out of the underworld. She says goodbye to her grandfather, and he yells after her, saying that without him she is worthless, she is nothing, and that Hades will never let her leave. She races up the stairs and thinks that this isn't true, that in a century or two Hades will become distracted by some nymph that will divert her attention, but Persephone isn't sure that she can wait that long. Chapter 12. When she gets back up, the giant says, hey, you weren't authorized to go down that far, and Hades will be upset, and she's like, well, I won't tell her if you won't, and he just kind of nods. When she finally gets back, Xenia is almost crying. They go to their horses and Xenia asks if she found what she was looking for. Persephone says she's glad she went down there, but thinks that she's only glad because it strengthened her resolve to get out of here. They get back to the palace and she is scrubbed again. She cannot catch a break. She is brought to Hades' rooms after instead of her own, and they are twice as big as hers. They have hot tap water, and Hades explains that they gained a lot when Daedalus died. Do I know who that is? No. Persephone jumps and said, I didn't hear you come in. Hades asks her to turn off the water, and she does. Persephone says that her mother could use the plumbing for her crops. Hades sits down and tells her to come here and tell her about her day. Persephone's hands are sweating, and she takes a seat on the end of the bed because there are no other seats. She tells her that she went to Tartarus today. Hades asks about all the stuff she wanted her to get done, and Persephone says Xenia might have said something about that. Hades asks what she did in Tartarus. You already know, don't you? Why are you asking me this? I wish to hear you tell me. Please do not walk away when I am talking to you. Is this an interrogation? I've committed no crime. Come back here and sit down, Persephone. No, do not force my hand. Oh, the gall of her. You do as you please, and you don't care what I think, Persephone said, raising her voice at last. You took me here against my will. You took my maidenhead. You took my freedom. Don't pretend I have a say in this. There were not enough loose objects nearby for Persephone's needs, but she made do, grabbing an ornamental vase and throwing it at Hades, followed by a small hand mirror, then a bust of what looked to be Athena, but might have been one of her acolytes, and finally, when she ran out of hard implements, every single cushion on the bed. Tears blinded her eyes, but she was not surprised when Hades strode up to her and grabbed her wrist, crushing them in her grasp. If you wish to behave like a child, then I will treat you as one. This is going amazing, as we can all see here. Nothing to see here. Nothing bad going on with this marriage.
There's no war in Ba Sing Se.
Hades wrestles her onto the bed. Hades says that she's not angry, she's just disappointed. She also says this is not a punishment for your actions, but I'm doing this because you need it. She then swings her over her lap and starts spanking her. Cool, 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 cool. They argue as she continues to do this. You should realize by now that I have no intention of doing any such thing. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can begin to enjoy your new life. Persephone couldn't remember the last time she'd been beaten, when she'd been a young child, perhaps centuries ago. Stop, please, you're hurting me. At first, each slap left an initial sting which soon faded away, but over time, as Hades continued to hit the same areas, Persephone's flesh grew warm, and it felt like each strike was igniting a fire under her skin. There are many beautiful, wondrous things you have yet to discover here. I would not have condemned you to such a life if I had thought it would make you miserable forever, but you will have to find meaning for yourself. Yikes. This continues, and Hades asks what Kronos wanted from her. Persephone admits he wanted his freedom. Hades then rolls her over and asks what Kronos had offered her. She says that he said he would help her, but she refused him, and she swears it on Athena's virtue. I bet Athena wants to be left out of this. Hades asks what else Kronos wants, and Persephone says he wants his conditions to be improved. Persephone does kind of stand up for him and says that he's been suffering for a long time. She is also still haunted from going down there, and Hades holds her. It was too soon for you to see that place. My tasks for you are not randomly constructed. They are designed to introduce you to your new domain in the correct order. Hades took a breath. I do like that it's clear that Hades thinks things through and like plots things out and is very methodical. She is not a good person by any stretch of the imagination, but she does think about what she's doing. Persephone says she wants to go home. It's very sad. Hades says, you are trying my patience. Hades lays her on the bed and redoes the hickey on the neck before leaving Persephone on the bed to turn turn off the candles, blow out the candles, I don't know. We then go into another assault scene with the strap on. I'm not going to go over it in detail. You guys can buy the book if you're interested. It's on her thigh instead of the regular way. Persephone does touch Hades' cookie while she's riding the thigh. It is getting much more dubcon as we go on, and eventually it will be consensual again, just so everyone knows. If they both get off, they're both kissing. Hades stands up and goes and runs some water and brings back a washcloth. Persephone says that she can do it herself, but she does just let Hades do it, and then Hades gets in the bed with her and holds her. You didn't do anything to Xenia, did you? She counseled me not to go, but I ignored her. Hades' hand stilled. Do you care for her? Was that a note of jealousy? I've only just met her, but she has been kind to me. As you say, I have no quarrel with her. I'm glad that our girl Xenia is okay. I was getting worried about it. They say goodnight to each other. It takes Persephone a long time to fall asleep. Hades needs to get her some of that overworld weed stat. Chapter 13. In the next few days, Persephone does accept the wedding gifts like she is supposed to, but she can't summon the exuberance that is expected. She tries not to be too sullen though, because she knows she needs allies. Persephone grew, if not fond, then at least accustomed to Hades' attentions, though she told herself she misliked them. Everything about Hades was a contradiction: her cold gaze and warm hands, her hardened heart and tender words. So perhaps it was no surprise that Persephone learned to both dread and hunger for the night when Hades' touch would set her body aflame.
Sure, Jan.
I know that this situation is terrible, but I think we can all see the lesbian writing on the wall. Most mornings she wakes up alone, which she finds easier, but a few weeks in, Hades is sitting at her desk writing, and she's like waiting for her to get up. She has a list of things she wants Persephone to do and like work on. Persephone takes the list and tries not to smudge it. Hades says she knows it's tedious, but you need to learn sooner or later, and I would rather it be sooner. Persephone needs to tell her something, but Hades is later than is ideal for her schedule. Persephone is able to admit that she doesn't know how to read, which Hades is surprised by. She says that she just never learned. Hades asks how she can help Demeter forecast her harvest and track planting in the fields. Persephone says that she knows her sums. Be that as it may, your mother has done you a great disservice. Hades glanced at the tablet lying atop the coverlet. No, this simply will not do. She gnawed at her bottom lip. I had hope. Never mind. I shall find you a tutor to assess your scholastic development or lack thereof. We will progress from there. I have to be on team Hades for this one because it is literally insane that her mother just let her be illiterate, but she's a controlling, abusive parent, so I can't say that I'm that shocked. It's not like there's a government entity in this world that could make sure that she receives schooling. Persephone says that she'll do her best, and Hades says she knows she will before leaving. She like kisses her before she leaves. Servant girl knocks on the door and brings her breakfast. She gets her dressed and fixes her hair, and Persephone asks where Xenia is. It's Xenia's day off. Good for her. I know she's been stressed the hell out by this entire thing. They only get one day off a month. It's better than the Owl House where the Emperor's Coven gets one day off a year. She gets taken to the library where her teacher will be waiting, and Persephone is surprised they're gonna start this fast. I'm not though, because it's not like we don't know that Hades is.
I'm a very busy woman and I haven't got all day.
There is a big man arguing with a boy about where the books are being shelved. He's her tutor, they sit. He asks if she knows her alphabet and she doesn't. His name is Stephanus. He was a playwright and a poet. She has no idea who she is because she wasn't allowed to go to any of the festivals before, but she does think to herself she really wanted to go to the festivals. He's kind of flabbergasted that she doesn't know who he is. He says if it were up to him, they would start with the theater because there's nothing more restorative than a well-earned laugh. But Hades chooses what they're doing. He talks while he eats, which she thinks is gross. She doesn't say anything about it because it's kind of nice that there's finally a mortal who isn't in awe of her, but she hopes he improves his manners in case he talks to Hades anytime soon for his sake. She works on the alphabet for the next several hours. Hades really meant it when she said this girl is gonna be literate. Persephone goes and gets them some more refreshments because the servant has fallen asleep in her chair. In the kitchen, there is a fully alive human man, and he says he is there to save her and that he's a friend. His name is Ismaros. He's here to rescue her. She asks if her mother sent him, and he says that she's sorely missing her, which is not really a direct answer, and this is a red flag to me. But Persephone isn't thinking as hard about it like right away. She thinks to herself that she doesn't think what's going on is right, but that she doesn't have much of a choice. She asks him again if her mother sent him, and he says of course, but he's like starting to get impatient and weird. He asks her to meet him at dawn tomorrow, and they will get on the next wagon out of the underworld. She says says she's ready and that they will meet at the stables. We'll need a way past Cerberus, he said. I've eluded him once before. That might be a problem. Whenever you did the same trick will not work a second time. Persephone frowned. I'll think of something, he nodded. Until we meet, do nothing to attract suspicion. What did he think she was, a simpleton? I could say the same for you. You don't look like a servant. He grimaced. I'll be careful. She returns to her teacher and thinks that she's not being taken back to Demeter, and that once she reaches the surface, she's gonna have to figure out a way to ditch Ismaros and then seek out her father. She thinks Zeus will annul her marriage and then she'll get her freedom.
Sure, Jan.
Has she never met him? Because that doesn't sound like him to me. She tells her teacher that their lesson is over because it's past lunch. He says to do another tablet's worth of lines and then you may go. She does this. He looks at them and says the slope is off and that they'll have to fix it tomorrow. She says, I thought you were teaching me how to read. He snarks back and says, do I lecture you when spring is 3 weeks late? No. Then we'll proceed doing this how I see fit. She says fine, but she's mad at him. She runs off and she tries to think about how she can encourage her wife not to spend the night with her. She knows that claiming a headache will not work. She figures it out while walking and she heads to the stables. She's looking for a place to hide in the morning, but she can't really find anything. She grabs a horse and goes to the river Lathe. She gets in the water. There's a lot of poppies growing around it. She looks at her reflection in the water and then she's like looking all around and thinking about how nice it looks out here. She thinks that she looks almost happy and wonders if she could be happy here. She takes a vial she got from the stable boy that has some kind of oil in it and she takes some of the water. She then lays down in the grass because she feels so tired. Page break. Persephone wakes up and she is on a horse with Hades, who has the horse she brought following her. Persephone asks where they are and Hades says they're almost home. Persephone didn't realize that she was asleep and Hades says, so deeply I couldn't wake you. Hades also tells her she needs to figure out one of the safe ways to approach the river Lathe and that she should probably avoid it until she figures it out. Persephone says, of course I'm sorry for being so much trouble. They traveled in silence for a time. It felt ... comfortable. Alistair's gait was gentle and she relaxed against Hades' shoulder. Would she miss Persephone when she was gone? She didn't think so highly of herself. After all, she couldn't even read. Hades would be better suited by a clever wife, one who could assist her to rule. So I do think a lot of this has to do with how Persephone sees herself at this point. It's not necessarily that she wants to go home. She already said she doesn't want to live with her mother again. But I think truly that she thinks so lowly of herself that she cannot envision herself with someone this important. There's obviously a lot of factors going on, but I do think her self-esteem is a big one. Also, we can tell that she's starting to get feelings. I just wish we had more time and scenes of them figuring each other out. Hades asks how her lessons were. Persephone says he hit her. Hades asks if she did anything to deserve that and Persephone says, I don't think so. Hades says once you're done learning, you can have him tortured for all eternity if you would like that. Persephone can't tell if she's joking and says he didn't hit me that hard. Hades says, jokes aside, you need to get as much information out of him as you possibly can to help with her duties as the consort. Persephone asked something her teacher had mentioned earlier about there being more suicides in spring than in the harvest time. Hades says you'd have to compare the records. Why? She explains that her teacher had said something to her and Hades asks if she's sure she doesn't want him tortured. It's clearly a joke, but it's still off-putting to Persephone. This is my type of humor, so I don't find it off-putting. She falls asleep and then they're back home. Hades tells her that dinner has been left for her and asks if she's feeling well while bringing her to her room. Persephone says she's just tired and asks if she can be alone for the night. Hades says she could have someone watch her, but Persephone says, no, please, I'm just tired. Hades says very well and kisses her and they wish each other a good night before Hades goes away. It is the first night she has been left alone since she's got married. This is the first time this has ever happened, but we're officially at the end of my notes. I was trying to do collateral damage before this one. That one is 60 chapters. So we are doing this how we're doing it. She gets up in the morning, she listens through the door to make sure Hades is not in her room, which is right next to hers. She's not, she's out working. So our girl Persephone goes down to the stable to meet Ismaros, that guy who's gonna help her get to the surface. He says that the wagon is ready and he asks if she has something for Cerberus and she says, yes, I have some broth with the water from that river because it will like make you forget things and make you feel kind of weird. Not really a nice thing to do to an animal, but it's the way it is. He wants her to hide in a storage chest and she says, really, in there? And he's like, not for long though. They are able to get past Cerberus. However, he starts howling and freaking out after having had the water because like it's obviously not good for him. He's not having a good time. So Smaros is like, yeah, we got around him, but it woke up like half the place. So Ismaros meets another guy by the water, and it turns out that Ismaros is not even his name, it's Theseus. The other guy's name is Pirate House, and they both help her out of the chest. Persephone confronts him about lying about his name, and she says, what else did you lie about? He says, I'm sorry about lying, but it was necessary to gain your trust. She asks who they are, and they are children of Zeus also. She asked this new guy, Pirate House, if they were sent by her mother to save her, and he's like, in a way. He's a terrible liar, much worse than Theseus. She demands they stop the wagon. They do not do this. They shut her in the chest and sit on it, and she's trying to thump and get out of it. It's not working. We then get hit with like the plot twist of the century, which is Pirate House being like, don't be upset when we get married. And she's like, married? What are you talking about? She says she still just wants to choose for herself, and he doesn't care because no one cares in this story. We get lore dropped about how Pirate House says, my wife died so long ago and we promised we would only get remarried if we could both marry one of Zeus's beautiful daughters, which is your half sister, so that's disgusting. This family tree is a wreath. She thinks to herself that she will kill this man rather than listen to him for another day because she finds him so annoying. She says that Hades will not let them go, and they just like break out into laughter. Hades is the weakest of the ruling gods. She has no match for her brothers nor her brothers' sons because she is a goddess and not a god. Of course, Pirate House said. The lid of the box creaked as if he was shifting his weight. Kronos should have had 3 sons, not 2. Hades defies her feminine nature by insisting to rule without a king by her side. The underworld will always be the weakest domain because of it. Persephone touched the chain around her neck, which she had tried so hard to remove. The warm metal cut into her fingertips. Hades did not choose a king, she chose me. Pirate House laughed again. She hated him more and more with each passing moment. She chose well, I'll grant her that, but a female could never hold you, sweet Persephone. You were destined for greater things. A depression in the road made the wagon dip for an instant, and Persephone banged her head on the side of the box. She groaned, reaching up and finding her forehead wet. You consider yourself greater than Hades. As a husband, yes, at least I meet the minimum requirements. You reach above your station. I am a king. I will grind your bones to dust, Persephone yelled, slamming her fists against the lid. He just laughs at her. I feel like some of this is to be like, Hades isn't that bad, because look at all these men who are much worse. I'm like, she's still bad. She's still bad. She thinks to herself she was stupid to think that they were Demeters simply because they were offering her freedom. I would agree with that, except she never exactly believed that they were there for her from her mother. She was always suspicious of that, so I think she shouldn't beat herself up too heavily. She then hears shouting outside. They're now moving the wagon in a zigzag, but then she is tossed free of the box, the chest. She gets out and Pirate House is dead. He's just straight up dead. And Hades says, a wedding gift for my lady wife. I kind of did love it. Hades is just soaked in his blood. She's like pissed, obviously. Hades tells her to come here. Persephone does, and she asks if she's hurt. She said, I'm fine, you're the one who's injured, because she has like a cut on her arm. Hades says, you're the one who has like ichor coming out of your head, and Persephone's like, I can't even feel it, honestly. Hades says, okay, we should probably go back home. Can you walk? And Persephone says yes. Persephone asks if Theseus is also dead, and Hades says, of course. She says their lives were forfeit the moment they entered my realm. Fair enough, I don't know what you expect of death. She had almost gotten out of the underworld, like just barely didn't. She's really sad about it. And she thinks she would have reached the surface, but at what cost? I mean, those 2 guys were creepy, so I don't really get why you care that they're dead. Persephone says, thank you for saving me to Hades. And Hades is like, your gratitude is noted. And then they go in a chariot silently. Chapter 15. Persephone has to get scrubbed because she's covered in blood. When is this girl not getting a scrub-a-dub-dubbed? I don't know. I bet there are no germs in the underworld though. Later, Xenia wakes her up and says, Queen Hades requests your presence. It's still dark out, so it has to be night, and Persephone is like, now? She goes to Hades' rooms to meet her. She just like walks right in, and Hades is like, no, try again, go back and knock. Persephone's like, you asked for my presence, and Hades is like, I insist. Go back, knock. So Persephone does, she goes back and does that. Hades is like, do you know why I asked you to do that? And she's like, because you feel the need to control everything. And Hades is like, not everything. She says, look, Persephone, people see how I treat you and you cannot be above the law. She's like, your law, yeah. And she's like, yes, my laws and ancient laws that were inherited. And we learn that there were deities worshipped before them. It does seem to be that this is really influenced by humanity legitimately. Like, it's not just there's one religion that is correct. And Persephone is like flabbergasted by this, and she's like, we are their gods, we are the humans' gods. And Hades is like, for now, for a time, and then probably not anymore eventually. And And Hades is like, we have to do our sacred duties or we'll be forgotten. And Persephone's like, what about my duties? How can I be the goddess of spring down here? Hades just says there was a time before you and your mom will be just fine, which does kind of make sense because it's not like she was here the entire time. Hades says, please tell me what happened this morning. Persephone doesn't want to kneel though, and Hades is like, in the overworld you had no problem showing respect, like proper respect to other gods and such. And Persephone says, that's before I knew what you were. Hades is like, what is that? And she says, my abductor and my defiler, along with like her wife. Persephone then tries again to beg to not be kept here. This is not working. I don't know why she keeps trying it. She literally says, I will be your wife in name, I will be your slave, I will be whatever you want, but you cannot keep me here. Hades says that you must learn to suffer well, Persephone, because she's not gonna let her go. Hades says, I can't say that I regret my actions, but I have done you harm. I could not wait for you to love me. They go over the gender stuff again because Hades is like, it's the way of the gods, and Persephone is like, you're not a god. And Hades seems to be really mad about that fact. So I just feel like a lot of the gender stuff is really iffy. I fall under greater scrutiny. People expect more and are less forgiving. Her voice softened. I cannot show mercy, not even to you. They would consume me if they knew. Knew what? Hades knelt beside her and covered Persephone's hand with her own. How precious you are to me. Persephone drew her hand back and wrapped her arms around herself. Hades stood, the dark folds of her chiton sighing around her. I will not ask for your forgiveness nor your understanding. Believe what you may, but I never wished for you to suffer. As an apology, it wasn't much, but it was more than what another god might have offered her. She hadn't been taught to expect any more. You hurt me, Persephone whispered. I know. Was it always to be like this, her on her knees, Hades above her, somewhere in the periphery of her vision? Would she always feel this hollow inside? Hades sat on the end of the bed, the frame creaking under her weight. She steepled her fingers, pressing her lips to them before glancing up. I will grant you a favor as my penance. I relinquish my marital rights. I will not force you into our marriage bed. If you wish to join with me, it will be of your own choosing. Persephone turned her head so that she could see Hades through her tears. And if that time never comes, then we shall both be poorer for it. She doesn't believe this. She believes this is a trick. I do think this is a step in the right direction, but I don't think that it like erases the harm from the actions before, obviously. Again, Greek gods, I do agree with Persephone that this is probably the best she's gonna get. It's sad. It's depressing. This Greek pantheon is sad. Hades asks what happened today. She wants to know about the bruises. Persephone wants to know how she was found so quickly instead. Hades admits that the chain that's around her neck that she cannot remove was spelled by very particular sorcerers. Persephone mentions it won't come off, and Hades says, yeah, that's because I intended that, yeah. Hades also says, you poisoned my hound, Cerberus. We love Cerberus in this house, poor buddy. And she says it will probably take years for him to be retrained. Persephone says she's sorry. And Hades says, are you? Persephone says that she had to. Zeus and Poseidon will be unhappy to hear of their children's misdeeds, but considering the circumstances, I am well within my rights to punish them. However, these kinds of incidents must be handled delicately. Hades leaned her back against the window frame, her arms crossed over her chest, one of them bandaged at the bicep. As your punishment. My punishment? Yes, your punishment. I haven't decided. But why? Persephone asked, her eyes filling again with tears. Hadn't she been punished enough? Hades was clearly not accustomed to being interrupted, but after a moment's pause she went on. You are not above the law, my dear. No one is permitted to leave the underworld without permission. Not even you? I cannot move as freely as my brothers. Hades stepped away from the window, pacing across the floor. It was the only way they would allow a goddess to rule, she said with venom in her voice. Did you think I chose this fate? To be feared by gods and mortals alike, to be loathed for the judgments I am duty bound to make. Like, I understand what she's saying, but to me it feels like the Taylor Swift brand of feminism, of like, how can feminism help me achieve the shittiest things possible that men have also achieved? I don't think that you should be aiming to do what like Zeus and Poseidon do with like less restrictions simply because you're a woman. I think none of you should be doing any of this. Persephone tries to point out that the cave was like above ground. How could you do that? And Hades is like, it's a liminal space. It doesn't really count. Hades is also very convinced that it was fate that brought them together. Hades says, you're tired, it's late, you should rest, go to bed, bye. And Persephone's like, that's it, because I think she was looking forward to go into Pound Town, you know, but she doesn't want to admit it, and that's okay. That's all right. She doesn't have to. That is still her assaulter. She doesn't have to admit it to anybody, not even herself. That's fine. But Persephone goes to her room, and that's the end of the chapter. Chapter 16. Persephone has like a sweet dream of her and Hades, and then she's woken up. Xenia is there to get her up for her daily staff. It was too early to be woken like this. She looked down to see she was still partially dressed from the previous night. Her skin was clammy and an unpleasant warmth lingered between her thighs. Was she so depraved as to desire Hades' touch after 2 nights without it? Yes. Yes, you are, and that's okay. She needs to go to the throne room because Hades needs her. She's like, okie doke. Hades helps her fix her clasp because she was like in a huge rush. She thinks of the dream again. She blushes a little bit. She's starting to get into her, which is, you know, neither here nor there. But she's like, will there ever be a time in my long immortal life where I can forgive Hades? Well, we're about to find out, I think. They go. It's an audience with the dead. Persephone asks if she like slept well, and Hades is like, well enough, how about you? And Persephone is like, yeah. She's like blushing, but Hades isn't looking at her. And they're in the throne room. They go to the 2 raised thrones. It's a whole thing. Also on the days, like the platform thing, are the other gods of the underworld. Thanatos, who was there for the wedding, Hypnos, and Morai. I haven't heard of that one, but whatever. They're there. They're gonna pass judgments. Gonna be a whole thing. But they start with Theseus and Period House. Yeah. Hades is like, okay, Theseus, explain the circumstances of your death. He stands tall and proud. He explains the whole thing, the pact, the whatever. He's not ashamed. Hades asks if King Period House concurs, agrees with that assessment of the deaths. He gives the same account. Basically, it differs very little. He's also not ashamed of trying to do any of this. Hades turns to her wife and says, wife, do you have anything to add? Persephone is like, what Theseus said is true to my knowledge. Hades said, did you leave with them believing that you would be escorted to your mother? And she's like, yes, that's true. Persephone is a little bit mad about being like questioned and like talked to like a commoner, like judged like a commoner, but she was literally told she's not above the law, so she really needs to get over it. Hades decides Theseus is going to level 8 and that Period House is going to level 10. Do I know where those are? Not really. Persephone also doesn't know, and she's like, oh, that must be like pretty bad based on like my judgment of how the crowd is reacting. Period House begs for mercy. That doesn't happen, obviously. Then she turned to Persephone. As for my lady wife, she looked down at the crowd addressing them. This is her first offense, and she does not yet know our ways. Therefore, 100 lashes and a period of exposure, the length of which is to be determined by myself. Persephone is upset about this. Hades turns to her and says, thank me for my mercy, like trying to give her advice, I think. And Persephone's like, what mercy? She's like, would you prefer the alternative? But eventually, after their little banter, she is like, thank you. They then continue with the whole like judging people thing. Persephone cannot get over that she's going to be punished. She really did not think it was going to be like a flogging and exposure. She thought it was going to be like a hush hush kind of deal. As soon as there's like a recess, Persephone is furious and she starts a fight with Hades. What was that? Are you mad? I am your wife, Persephone said, her hands and fists. Your actions belie your words, Hades said, and popped a grape into her mouth, chewing slowly and swallowing before speaking. Have you listened to any of the other cases? That last one now, the farmer, what was his misdeed? I don't know. What does it matter? Hades turned and looked at her. Then this exercise is pointless given your current frame of mind. You might as well go and work on your reading with Stephanus instead of attending this afternoon session. What? Him? But we haven't discussed. There is nothing to discuss. Hades jerked her head toward the exit. Persephone threw her hands in the air and all but ran out, wishing for a door to slam behind her to show her displeasure, and having to satisfy herself instead with the sharp sound of her footsteps echoing down the hallway as an unsatisfactory proxy. While this entire situation is terrible, and I do believe that Persephone has been punished enough, I do also kind of appreciate Hades being like, you're not above the law. Nobody is, so I don't know why. I like it. Chapter 17. Hades doesn't request her presence for like another week or two. Persephone has been like dreading it, waiting for Xenia to just say when the punishment is gonna be. So one gray morning after a few weeks, she is not guided to the library to do her lessons, but instead to the back of the palace. Xenia seems really sad and upset, so Persephone knows that the punishment is coming. Even though she's about to get publicly humiliated and whipped, she's kind of excited to see her wife. I don't know why. She walked to Persephone and cupped her cheek, tilting her face up. This close to Hades, Persephone's lips tangled. She almost thought she wanted, girl, get a grip. She announces the punishment again. It's a whole thing. They have her stripped to the waist. They kind of like tie her up to like a tree. They have her count. Persephone thinks that they would have never allowed this on the surface, but obviously there are very different customs here. I think Xenia is actually counting. Sucks. While this is happening, because it's so painful and awful, she thinks she should have taken Kronos' bargain, which is kind of fair, except then there would not be much of a world to go back to. So partway through, they're only like 6 lashes in. Persephone says, please, I can't do this. Hades says, you will survive this, dear one. You are a lot stronger than this. She kisses her in the middle of her forehead, and then they go back to to the whipping. I was kind of hoping it would be sexy whipping, but it's not. So she is given some breaks, but it really doesn't help. When they're done, Hades is like, okay, we're gonna leave you exposed for a while until you escape from your bonds or I come and decide it's done. She asks her wife if she's giving her the tools to escape, and Hades says, you already have them. Kisses her forehead again, and then she dips. She's out. Well, I mean, she doesn't dip out immediately. There's some like gay stuff. And then Xenia is going to stay with her, and she tells her to suffer well, Persephone, and then she dips. Xenia cleans the wounds. Very nice of her. Persephone asks how long she'll stay, and Xenia says until nightfall at least. She asks how long she's going to be kept like this, and Xenia's like, I really don't know. And this isn't a punishment I've witnessed before. Persephone tries to be like, Xenia, you could release me, because like Hades is gone, she wouldn't know, and Xenia's like, you would know and I would know, which means that Hades would know. And like, I'm sorry, I can't. Persephone's like, fine then, tell me a story if I'm to suffer. She tells her all about like her kids and her grandkids and the one she sees in the other world from time to time and all that. Persephone asks again, like, what punishment did you do to deserve like serving me? And Xenia's like, it's not a punishment. So like, I had to compete with like hundreds of women who were of far nobler birth than me. Persephone's like, why? Forgive me for saying so, but you cannot afford to be this naive. The underworld has never been and never will be a democracy. The host of many is its mistress, and you have her confidence. Persephone wasn't sure if she would forgive Xenia. I've never changed her mind. Perhaps not yet, but in time she will listen to you. Persephone could not imagine that ever happening, but then again, Hades had seemed moved by her plight, and though she'd lingered over Persephone's suffering that morning, she'd also walked away despite whatever else she might have desired. In time, do you mean a year or a century? Change can come faster than that. She may seem harsh, but it is only her duty. Perhaps you could help her see another way, and perhaps Zeus would become celibate. I do love her sassy little thoughts. Xenia has to leave because it's nighttime, and Persephone says, is someone else gonna come? And she's like, probably not, no. Persephone says, what should I do? And Xenia says, Queen Hades does not lie. If she believes you have the power to free yourself, then you have the power to free yourself. Persephone says, Hades doesn't mean for me to succeed, and Xenia says she must. She said she wishes her good luck, and she is gone. She's out. She can't sleep like this because of how her body is. It's too uncomfortable. It's too painful. It's not fun. She's trying to figure out what plants she can call to, even though the plants don't really listen to her down here. There's not enough grass. She doesn't know what to do. But she can actually hear the willow talking to her, and she's straining to hear it, but she can hear it. She's having a really hard time communicating with the tree, and it takes her a long time, but she is actually able to make the fungus within the tree grow to the point where the tree becomes dead and she can just snap herself out. And after she's freed herself, she's like, yay, and she like goes to the flowers, who she can now kind of talk to, and she feels Hades' presence before she sees her. Persephone knows she should be mad, but she's kind of like super proud of herself, and I do think that this was an important moment for her because her mom has really belittled her and diminished all of her accomplishments. So I do think this was important, even though it was a really sucky way that we got here. Hades comes to her, and Persephone's like, you need to make this stop. And Hades like, what do you hear? And she's like, I can hear all of the plants. I can hear all of them, and they won't shut up. Hades gets her to breathe in and out with her, and she is able to stop hearing the plants. Yay! Hades was her lodestone, both attracting and repelling. When Persephone had left the hilltop, her head filled with ghosts, her first impulse had been to run to her. But now that she was here, Persephone could not stand the thought of breathing the same air. Persephone and Hades kind of have this fight where she's like, well, what would have happened if I couldn't figure this out? I would have been there for like days and days. And Hades is like, well, Xenia would have helped you eventually. And she's like, but like I would have, what the fuck? And he's just like, but I knew you could do it. Like I knew that you could do this, and no matter what your mother says, I know you're destined to do great things. And I do think that's really nice. I just wish there hadn't been as much assault in the beginning. Persephone is really sad though because she killed the tree, and Hades is like, not really, a shade can't die twice, so at least there's that. And Persephone once again asks if trees have souls, and Hades is like not answering that, and she's like, well, yeah, you broke something, but like you found something much more valuable, so like I don't really care. Hades says she's beautiful. Persephone really wants to go back to the palace, and Hades says, okie doke. Persephone thinks to herself that she's going to give Hades no reasons to be upset with her, so that Hades will never touch her ever again, even though we all kind of know she doesn't really want that. Chapter 18. She's continuing to read. She's getting a lot better at it. She's starting to read things like in her room and in bed. She's reading through the history of the underworld, the judgments from the last 10 years for her lovely consort job. Hades has her sit and pass judgment from time to time, and Persephone is able to sway her opinion on multiple occasions. She also got her to lessen some of the punishments for those that are in Tartarus and have it be a little bit nicer. She still dreams about getting freaky with Hades, including like for the whipping. She's like, ooh, what if we had... But she's like, I don't want to think about that. I'm like, girl, you clearly do. But Hades has not been trying to get with her at all. True to her word, Hades gives her dominion over a patch of land so that she can grow things and like make things all nice. She's working on growing a lot of fruits. And she also kind of spends a lot of time with her grandpa Kronos now, which is a little bit crazy because he tried to eat your dad and your aunt wife. So they play games there, and Kronos is kind of getting a little soft now, and he's like, tell your wife to come visit sometime. I miss her or whatever. And I'm like, you ate her. I don't want to hear that. She goes back out of Tartarus. She goes back home. There's now a nice new bathhouse because of some guy named Perdix. If that is an ancient Greek reference, I don't know. I can't know everyone from ancient Greece, so be. Persephone's like, what are you doing here? And Hades is like, what does it look like? She's like, yeah, you have your own bathing chamber. And she's like, yeah, but this one is so nice. And Hades is all like trying to kind of banter and being like, oh, are you upset that I deflowered the bathhouse because you wanted to do that? And Persephone's like, that's not the point. Hades is like, please don't be cross with me. Persephone, I've had a very, very long day. I'm tired. Persephone decides she's gonna get in the water too and just ignore Hades' presence because she's like, there's enough room for 30 people. I'm just gonna get in the bath. You can't stop me. Hades is like weaving her own hair into a braid, and Persephone is like, you shouldn't do that. It's gonna break the strands because they're wet. And Hades is like, you are unusually preoccupied with my well-being today. Persephone crossed her arms over her chest and glared, then forced herself to look away and relax her posture. Her well-meant intention to ignore Hades seemed impossible, like the gesture of an opium addict throwing away their pipe. She would always come back to her. Wait, always? Persephone stood in silence, trying to draw comfort from her warm and lush surroundings and failing miserably. The staccato drip of a water clock wore away at her consciousness, her thoughts spiraling in ever-decreasing circles. She hated Hades. She hated her. Sure, girl, who are you trying to tell? Me or you? Let me know. So she watches Hades as she like gets out and dries herself, and she's like, I know I shouldn't watch, but I'm gonna. Girl, if anybody has the right, it's you. If anybody has the right, it's you. I promise. She's finally alone because Hades leaves, and she's like, yay, finally. I'm like, girl, you are just horny. Persephone can't sleep later because she can't stop thinking about her wife naked. Gay. She thought she'd be cured of this, cured of wanting her, but it seemed there was nothing in the underworld that Hades had not spoiled. She's trying to think about like other people and how pretty they are, like Aphrodite, Artemis. It's not working. It's not working. I literally charged my battery packs, I swear to God, and they just decided not to do it. So we're gonna have to finish this on my phone. Sorry about the audio quality. I'm trying my best here. Everything that can go wrong with this video, like, has gone wrong. So she's feeling very conflicted with herself and is being all like, I shouldn't want her, like no one would want her in my position, yada 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 yada. I don't necessarily agree. I don't know. She's just like, she's really going through it. She's trying to make it work. It's not working. What can we do? Nothing. Persephone sees that Hades is also still awake, and she's like, you know what? I'm gonna go in her room and I'm gonna bother her because
I'm getting no sleep because of y'all. Y'all not gonna get no sleep because of me.
Persephone goes in and Hades is like, what do you want? And she's like, I can't sleep. So she's asking what Hades is reading, and Hades is reading a land development report, and Persephone is like, that sounds boring. And Hades is like, cause it is. She's like, can you read it to me? Like, help me sleep. She's still thinking about her wife not touching her, and it's driving her mental. Hades has said she would not touch Persephone unless invited. Her words were both Persephone's shield and the walls to her own cage. She had given Persephone the key and set herself as jailer. Girl, like, if you wanna, I know you're worried about morals, but at this point, do morals matter? Your dad is Zeus. Your mom's abusive. I don't think it matters. I really need to cut my bangs. Oh my God. Anyway, so Hades, despite being kind of annoyed, does read her this report anyway, because she's trying to be, I don't know, nice or whatever. She's so down bad for her, she like can't help it. But instead of that, she just thinks too much about Hades while she's like keeping at her. Persephone let the details wash over her and instead studied the shape of Hades' lips, the contours of her face. She had such focus, radiating stillness like the depths of a frozen pond. Hades worked too much. All these clever humans surrounding her, but none worthy enough to read a simple report. Work was her addiction, her crutch. If Persephone remained in the underworld, if she had to stay, she wouldn't allow herself to be put in second place. Hades finished her sentence, then looked at Persephone. Her fingers greased the scroll. This is a dangerous game you play. Are you certain you wish to trifle with me? Persephone opened her mouth and closed it again. Certain, Nothing about Hades made her certain about anything, least of all her own feelings. Hades tells her to go to her own bed, and she says just a couple more lines, and Hades is like, no, go. Get out. Leave. Persephone is now wondering, because of like the dilated pupils and all the other stuff, if Hades can still smell that she's aroused even though she like scrubbed herself, What is it with all these books and smells? I don't need to know about the smell. You keep that to yourself. She goes, she kisses Hades' cheek, she says good night, and then she leaves, and Hades says like nothing, because she's obviously annoyed. And Persephone says at the end of the chapter, she has no idea what she wants, not anymore. So there's now going to be some kind of celebration for some small holiday that Persephone's not really sure about, and she's like, I really need to get a better grasp upon the calendar, and I would agree. She asks what season it is up above, and he says, well, I think it's summer. And Persephone's like, again? She's very disconnected from the seasons and like the passage of time because she's not in the overworld anymore, and she's busy like doing all these things for the underworld now. She says that means that our wedding anniversary has passed already. And Hades says, yeah. And she's like, well, we didn't exchange gifts or anything. And Hades like, do you want to? Is there anything in particular you want? And Persephone's like, there's only one thing that I've ever asked of you. Hades is like, untrue. But you know I can't grant your wish, so. Persephone kind of has like a temper tantrum over this. Again, she's a kidnapping victim. We'll give her some grace on that. She could go to Lethe now, drink of its waters. It was always there as a fallback in the event that she could not endure this captivity any longer and simply wished to drown her sorrows. But then, if she no longer remembered who Hades was, what she'd done to her, why would she try to resist Hades' silken tongue and her warm hands and warmer bed? No, she couldn't bear that. Lethe was not an option, not unless she wanted to let Hades win. She kind of runs away. She runs into a scribe. There's a little like, does Hades make you work all night? And he's like, it's an honor. And she's like, she should fucking knock it off. And he's like, I actually bring news. So for some reason, he does tell her that the number of new arrivals has like doubled in the last year. She asks if there's a war. He says no. She asks someone else where Hades is. She's in the plane of judgment, and Persephone is gonna bring him to her. On they go. There is a famine. Hades knows that the number was unusually high this year, but she didn't really think that much about it. The ranges were in natural fluctuation, but now it's not. The deaths are also increasing exponentially. Persephone's like, what does that mean? And Hades is like, it means someone's not doing her duty. But Persephone, even though her mother is abusive and she has been separated with her for a while, cannot accept that this is true. And she's like, no, there has to be an explanation. Like, my mother would never abandon her duty. Hades gets mad and snaps at her and says that her mother is selfish and always has been, which is true. What can I do to help? Persephone asked. Hades' mouth twisted, the corners downturned. Talk to the dad, confirm their story. Of course, Persephone said, grateful to have something to do. There will be some other reason for this, she added. We shall see. Chapter 20. Yeah, there is no explanation. Her mother is just being a jerk. There was nothing else to explain it save that Demeter had abandoned her worshippers, heedless of their prayers and sacrifices. Persephone could not believe it. Her mother had never seemed so cruel as to look upon a starving child and deny them succor. I would disagree, because we're going to learn even more crazy information about her mom and her relationship. I don't agree. Hades is in the library with Hermes. Persephone goes there. Hermes is like, how have you been doing? Are you well? And she's like, yes, I'm quite well, thank you. She's asking about what's going on with her mom. Hermes is trying to be like, no, it's not really the time. Hades is like, look, people are dying like more every day. We need to get to the bottom of this stuff. Hermes says that Demeter sends her regards and demands the safe return of her daughter. She has regretfully informed Zeus that she will not resume her duties until Persephone is under her care. Obviously, we have like an abusive relationship between Hades and Persephone kind of going on. It is kind of healing, if you can believe that, sort of. But the relationship with Demeter is deeply abusive, and Persephone just has not been able to accept that yet. So she is being so controlling. Persephone says, can she do that? And Hades says, well, if your father can't command her to be sensible, then yes, I guess she can. Hermes is kind of freaking out because all the gods and goddesses are starting to lose followers, which, as you know, in this specific retelling, it means that they're all going to start dying. And my fields are swelling with shades. The queues for judgment are becoming unmanageable, Hades said. What if I were to reject them all, send them pouring back into the mortal world? Demeter is not the only one among us who could bring civilization to ruin. Persephone's like, you would never. And Hades like, I am sorely tempted. Hermes is like, I brought a witness. This guy comes, gives his testimony, says like they sacrificed all these things for Demeter's favor and they got nothing. People are like dying left and right. Poseidon took pity on them and made sure their nets were like very full for a long time, and they had enough, but this summer is it's not enough. It's not going to be enough. He says a lot of them still try to pray to Demeter, even though their belief is greatly diminishing. They are not excited about it. Hades listens to all the testimony and says, okay, you may go. You see why you must concede, Hermes said. Me? Why should I do anything? Hades asked. I have not abandoned all sense of duty, of mercy. I have done nothing wrong. One of you must yield, Hermes said, for all our sake. Hades is like, you must be tired from your journey. Why don't you stay? And Hermes is like, Zeus is expecting me back. Hades says that Zeus can wait, and Hermes is like, okay, I'm gonna fucking kill that dog. I swear to God. And I love dogs. I'm sick of this. This is every night, by the way. Every single night. At the same time. Hades says Zeus can wait. Hermes is like, okie doke. Hades is mad. Not happy. She's not happy. Hades says, sit down. We have to talk about your mom. Hades is like, tell me about your mother. Tell me all about her, please. We have a very important conversation here. I'm going to read some of it to you. Demeter has many faults, but I never once thought she would turn her back on her own progeny. She did not neglect me. Then why was Stephanus the first person to teach you your letters? Why is your swordmanship lacking, your mathematics dire, and your knowledge of history non-existent? Persephone's cheeks flushed to hear herself described in such a manner. It's not her fault. I'm simply a poor student. Not her fault. Hades slammed her fist on the table, making Persephone jump. It is the duty of the parent to prepare their child for the brutality of the world we find ourselves in. And you are not a poor student. If you would take anything from your time here, remember that the world of knowledge lies at your feet, and you are more than capable of grasping it. Persephone fiddled with the fraying edge of her chiton. She's always busy, she said in a faint whisper. Hades looked down at her, studying her expression. She frightens you, that is plain to see. Persephone blanched. Hades paced across the rug, then back again. I always thought, Zeus claimed, I was wrong it seems, she said, her face sour. She stopped pacing, hands clasped behind her back, looked again at Persephone. You were not wanted, is that so? But a goddess of fertility can hardly deny the seed forced upon her. Persephone squeezed her hands tight in her lap and looked down at them, willing herself not to cry. Yes, Hades said to herself with more confidence, that would explain her indifference, but it is wrong to blame a child for the sins of the father. I wasn't an easy child. Stop making excuses for her. Persephone flinched. Hades looked at her and sighed, rubbing her hand across her face. Forgive my tone, she said more quietly. It is not your fault, neither your upbringing nor the situation we find ourselves in. The latter fault lies with me. I should not have underestimated Demeter. She briefly pressed her knuckles against her lips before speaking again. She has been a selfish one. Perhaps you know that. She takes pains that others won't see, Persephone said quietly, fighting against every survival instinct that warned her not to speak ill of Demeter. Yes, I believe she hates me because I remember a time when she was imperfect. Hades clasped her hands behind her back again, her gaze distant. At the height of the Titanomachy, it seemed certain that we, the gods, would lose. It had been before Persephone's time, but every child knew the war of the Titans. What did she do? I caught her preparing to broker a deal with the Titans that would save her own skin, but doom the rest of the gods. If Zeus had found out, she would have been cast down, chained in Tartarus or worse. You kept her secret. I chose to believe she was sorry, that she repented. I never warned the others of her erstwhile treachery. Hades sighed. We all make mistakes, after all. She stared pensively into the distance. If she saw you, if you returned to her, would she relent? Persephone didn't know whether to hope the strain of her yearning and ache in her chest. It would mean she'd won. She likes that. She would be magnanimous in victory. Are you sure? Yes, Persephone said with more conviction than she felt. What should we do? Perhaps if she knew I was saved, she would relent. We could send a token. So we have a lot to unpack there, but yeah, I really do like that Hades is bringing up all the ways that Persephone has been neglected and abused and just completely treated like shit by her mother, right? And this is just another weird, cruel power play that she is literally leveraging human lives in order to get what she wants. And Hades says, you know what, actually pack your bags, you gotta go. You gotta go, because this is the only way this is gonna stop. She's like, yay, I'm going home, this is what I begged for, this is what I pleaded for, but why do I feel like I don't want this anymore? Sorry, girl. She runs up to Hades, she hugs her, and she says, thank you, and she's very overwhelmed by it, and then she's excited she's going home. Chapter 21. Persephone doesn't have a lot to pack. She visits her grove before she leaves, that kind of stuff, you know. She decides to take one of the fruit from her trees because she's really proud of having grown it in the underworld. It was really hard for her, so she is taking one of those. And it's, guess what fruit? A pomegranate. Yep. She's thinking about all the things that she will miss here. She's very happy that Hades introduced her to the written word, and she will always be grateful for that. She goes to Hades' door, knocks on the door, and says, are you there? She's not there. She crouches to look at some of the things that, you know, Hades has as documents / scrolls or whatever, and there's her marriage contract between her and Hades, which was signed off on by, again, Zeus. And she finds out that the bride price pretty much was like Hades allowed Zeus's lover that he had been talking about in the beginning to come back from the underworld. She goes to the library to see Hades. Hades doesn't know it's her. It's like, not now. And she like opens the door and she's like, did I not just say? And then she sees who it is and she's like, oh, okay, it's my wife. Persephone feels like Hades has been crying and she's like, have you been crying? She's like, I have not cried since I was forced to rule over this place. And to show weakness before the gods is bad. And Persephone's like, well, I'm no god. And Hades is like, well, then perhaps I might shed a tear for you yet. I'm like, oh. Hades is like, you got what you wanted. Why are you even here? I don't really get it. And Persephone's like, I came to say goodbye. And Hades is like, fine, goodbye. See ya. Get out. I have work to do. See ya. Persephone's like, I saw my marriage contract. And Hades is like, why the fuck does that matter? She's like, you traded Zeus's lover for me. And you never let the dead leave. You never, ever let the dead leave. And Hades is like, normally no, usually no. And Hades is like, yeah, but Persephone's like, you never let them. And Hades is like, well, I obviously do sometimes because you've seen proof that I do. And Persephone's like, why? And Hades says that after, you know, that day of meeting, like with the eavesdropping, that she just could not stop thinking about her. Like, you signed that contract over 100 years ago. She's like, why did you wait so long? I don't understand. And Hades is like, it doesn't matter. She's like, it does to me. She says like all this romantic stuff, right? And like, it's kind of cute. I don't know. I don't know. She's like, I also just wanted to make sure that you were gonna be okay down here because condemning people to live down here is like not fair. That's what happened to me. And also like your power is called to me or something. And if not fate, then what should I name it? There is no death without life and no life without death. Something in each of us yearns for the other. You have felt it too. Persephone labeled her fascination with Hades a sick obsession, her weakness. I don't know what I felt. I feel, Hades paused. You disarm me. I burn in Tartarus each day from your hatred, when all I wish is to have and to keep you, and to never allow another person to lay hands upon you again. She leaned back in her chair, her gaze raw with longing. You stole my heart, and now it beats, fragile and weeping, within your fist. I should despise you for that. I don't hate you anymore, Persephone whispered, perhaps once, but not anymore. Not for a long time. The air seemed too heavy, too pregnant with possibilities. She held Hades' heart. What did that even mean for them? Will we meet again? She asked. Hades placed her palms on the table. She had accidentally touched her face with her ink-stained hand, leaving a smudge on her cheek. Our lives are endless to a point. I will doubtless see you in the overworld at one event or the other, but not as your consort. No, you have made your feelings on that subject abundantly clear. She cannot get over, though, Persephone cannot get over that Hades said, you stole my heart. Like, it's really doing something for her. She says, like, I'm leaving tomorrow with Hermes, but I would like to formally say goodbye to you as my wife, which means she wants to do the nasty. And Hades is like, if you do this, I might not be able to let you leave. And Persephone's like, you gave me your word is law, you won't go back on your word. They have sex in the library. That's all you need to know. I'm not gonna say the rest. If you want to read these spicy scenes, buy the book or whatever. They keep kissing after. I'm assuming that they're gonna keep going for a bit. I think that's what's implied. Chapter 22, the ascent is happening. Hades escorts them across the river, says, give Zeus my regards. Persephone says, I will. And Hades says, don't forget me. And she says, never. And Hermes clears his throat because he's me. He's the awkward third wheel in this scenario. Hermes is like, your mom will be delighted to see you. And she's like, yeah, I missed her too. And I hope that my dad won't be too displeased about this whole thing. She gets there and Demeter is there before she can even see Zeus. And she's like, oh my God, my baby. And she's like holding her and freaking out and being like, oh, my baby. Hermes is like, you should be with your mom. And Persephone is like, Hermes. And then Hermes like kind of dips after a little bit. He's like, oh, I don't want to be here for this. Demeter's like, we have to get you home at last. Yay. And she's being like really kind of overly sweet. But again, this is an abuse tactic. We've been over all these abuse tactics. We know. We already know. Persephone is kind of like spacing out and she's not like moving to go immediately. And Demeter like yells at her, like her name to like get going. And she's like, where are we going? And she's like, home, obviously. And she's like, I need to see my dad, obviously. Demeter says to Persephone, your father has more important things to deal with than the likes of you. Super rude. Her mom is always rude. Demeter looks completely healthy now when she looked really sickly and weird before. So she thinks to herself, like, had Persephone imagined her mother's transformation? No. But then why would Demeter make herself look so sickly? To arouse pity. Yes, obviously, girl, your mom is manipulative and weird. She's riding with her mom and her mom's like, stop that. And Persephone's like, what? And she's like accidentally making like a trail of wildflowers behind them. And Demeter like wilts all the flowers immediately. And Persephone is like, and her mother's like, don't waste future soil on flowers. Some flowers are edible. Some of them are. Bitch, like God. Persephone's like, have you restored the mortals' crops? And Demeter says, yes, they will have everything they want now that my prayers have been answered. They're home. Her mom's like, come in, let's go. And her mom's like, eat with me, tell me everything. Persephone says, there's not much to tell. And I'd rather hear about how you're doing. Like, I was worried about you. You must have been so worried about me. And her mom's like, oh, there'll be time for that later. Let's talk about you, which is obviously just like mining for information. She gives her a very like sanitized version of events. At times, Demeter interjected to comment on what she saw as Persephone's stupidity, or to exclaim how dreadful the underworld must be. At those moments, Persephone repeated her gratitude toward Demeter for saving her, but it seemed like no matter how fervent her thanks, they were never enough. She had never talked this much about herself in her mother's presence before, and the conversation seemed to drag on for hours until the sun was low in the sky. Demeter wanted to know everything about Hades, much of which Persephone was unwilling or unable to tell her. Is she still using that helm? Demeter asked. Which helm? Demeter waved a hand. Before your time, did she cry over her human souls? The children used to bother her, if I recall rightly. Demeter's tone made it seem like the prospect of Hades' suffering excited her. Persephone was discomforted by the way Demeter watched her over the rim of her chalice, her eyes too bright and cunning. I don't think so, Persephone said. A pity. Perhaps all those years underground have muddled her brain. Why else would she think to steal my only daughter, my pride and love? It's done now, mother, Persephone said. She sent me back. Not without some prodding on my part. Is that what you call the murder of thousands of innocents? Demeter laughed bitterly. Innocence? Is that what you think? Don't be so naive. Persephone could feel herself shrinking, made small by her mother's words. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Some of them were infants. The hospital fields will be kinder to them than any city made by man. As we can see, her mother is dismissive and terrible, and she doesn't think a lot about mortals. She doesn't think anything of them. She thinks they're tools for her to use to exact her own will. Lovely. Demeter wants to see like what she's brought, and she's like, hey, those are my things. Can you not go through them? But her mother doesn't care, so she does anyway. She gets furious about the pomegranate being there, and Persephone's like, it's just a souvenir. Like, I was really proud that I grew it. Like, I was really proud of myself. Demeter is like, have you eaten the food down there? Did you taste the water? And Persephone's like, no. And Demeter's face like softens. What the fuck? Don't move to New Hampshire. It's a hellhole. So Demeter throws the pomegranate into the cooking fire, which makes her like really upset. Demeter blocks Persephone from taking the pomegranate out of the fire, but Persephone doesn't give up. She grabs a pail of water and she's like, Mom, move. And her mom is not moving. But Persephone is starting to feel like not right. She's not able to move like correctly, and she's like, what have you done to me? And her mother's like, I've only done what's necessary. And then it kind of like her eyelids feel like too heavy to open, and she kind of just like goes unconscious. Chapter 23. Persephone is in a wooden bed. Her head is aching. Her clothes are damp. She smells like fish. She has been taken to a room in the cellar, and her mother's there with a little torch being like, don't you remember what I said last time? Persephone's like, I haven't been bad. Oh, but you have. And what's more, I said that if you ever humiliated me before the gods, that would be enough to see you back here. You sent me away. Demeter sniffed. I did nothing of the sort. I merely said you were to leave me in peace for a while. You know how your hysterics give me pains in my head. How was I to know that you would run off and get yourself captured? I tried to escape, Persephone said as her gaze roamed the borders of her cell. It felt even smaller than it had as a child. You must not have tried very hard, dear. Even mortals manage to leave the underworld somehow, and you have the pedigree of Olympus behind you. I tried, she says. And then she also says that, like, you poisoned me, and her mom's like, it was just a sleeping draught. Don't be so dramatic. Her mom, like, comes up, rips off, like, her clothes, and tries to rip off the necklace, but can't. She says, what witchcraft is this? It's literal witchcraft. Persephone says, I don't know. Demeter says, the rumors must be false. You went to her willingly. I know you did. Her mother is like kind of like choking her. She's struggling to breathe, and she's like, okay, what do you have to say for yourself? Like, she can't talk. You're choking her. Persephone says it's complicated, which isn't even true. She did not go willingly. Demeter is like ripping stuff off of her head. It's taking some of her hair with her. As you reek of filth and excess, Demeter said. Hades may have made you her whore, but here you are my daughter, and you will comport yourself as such. Persephone gathered the torn edges of her chiton, clasping them to her chest. Tears streamed down her face. Why are you doing this? You are not Hades' wife. Zeus had no power to sell you off without my agreement. You're not a queen of the underworld. You are simply my selfish, ignorant daughter, and I am the person with the misfortune to call myself your mother. That's not my fault. Demeter then slaps her really hard. This is so abusive. It's even worse than we thought because she locked her in the cellar all the time. She's physically assaulting her. Like, it's even worse than we imagined before. Like, it's really bad. Persephone tries to stand up for herself more because her mom's like, you're a girl, like all this stuff. And she's like, I am a woman, a married woman. She also says, I know what you did during wartime. Hades told me. And Demeter's like, you don't know what you're talking about. She lied. She's like, I'll tell everybody. I will tell everybody. Fuck you. She's like, you think anyone will believe your word over mine? I don't think so. It's just more gaslighting bullshit. And she's like, you're gonna stay here until we get your marriage annulled, and you will see no one, you will speak to no one. Persephone says, you can't do this to me. I was promised to her by Zeus. You can't just do this. And Demeter says, he'll do what he must. He'll do it. She begs her mother to wait. Her mom does a little bit. Persephone tries to backtrack, and she's like, please forgive my foolishness. Like, I'm really grateful you saved me. Like, please don't do this. Demeter's like, I'll see you when you come back. Persephone's like, please don't leave me underground. Like, I have been in the underworld for a long time. Please don't leave me underground. I can't do it. And her mom's like, you'll be fine. And her mom just ignores her and leaves her and herself. Persephone pounds at the door, throws some things. It doesn't work. She's very upset. Obviously, this is super triggering. She peeks out of the window across the bars and tries to look. She can't really see a lot out. And she's now thinking that she's like gone from one prison to another. Persephone thinks like, I survived the underworld. I can survive this. My mother won't be angry forever. And then Persephone would what? Return to acting as the dutiful child. That role had ever been ill-suited for her, and now it did not seem to fit at all. What other choice did she have? Demeter would never change. A year apart had given Persephone hope, so quickly dashed. She had endured her mother's moods for centuries, knowing nothing else, and had been prepared to live with them for centuries more. But now, she prays to her grandmother Gaia. She's like, I'm gonna get out of here. So chapter 24 is weird because we get Demeter's POV, and that's super weird because like we've had no one else's POV this entire time. This is one of my only gripes with this book. What is this? Demeter wants something from this poisoner guy that can kill a god. He has some kind of Hydra poison and it's gonna work. She's like, how do we know this will work? But then she's like, you know, I have no reason to doubt you actually, and you came highly recommended by Artemis, so I'm just gonna do it. They haggle for a price, and then she grabs it, and she's gonna go, and she's gonna test it on Hades. Yeah. She decides to test it first before Hades, because she's definitely gonna do it to Hades on someone named Monime, who I think is a nymph. Yes, it is a nymph. Monime was a safe choice. If you would miss her, Demeter tried to avoid looking down at Monime's chalice. Its rim carefully coated with a thin layer of the venom. This girl does not want to drink this, and Demeter's like, you have to have some of this wine. But she's trying to do it in like a sneaky way, and of course she's like, I'm so blessed, like you're Demeter and you're talking to me. I just feel really bad for her. She drinks it, and then she's like, what did you do to me? What did you do? Because she's like feels gross immediately, and she just like dies. What does it feel like? Demeter asked. Burns. It burns, Monime whimpered, her words difficult to distinguish. What did I do? What did I do to offend you? Demeter considered it. Your stories were awfully dull. Monime wordlessly screamed. The sounds were giving Demeter a headache. Would you like it to stop? Yes, Monime screamed. Yes, I'll do anything. She just like waves her hand, and the girl is replaced by an oak tree. Really, really sad. She's like, I'm gonna give Artemis a gift basket for recommending this guy to me. And I'm like, you are mental. You are losing it. You have lost the plot. She goes back and she goes to Persephone's and she's like, what? Oh, Mom, what? She's like, I have great news. I found the perfect wedding gift for your new lover. Persephone flinched as though she'd been struck. You said you would have my marriage annulled. Demeter shrugged. I sent my messengers, but you know how busy your father is. He'll be pleased when he sees this matter resolve itself. Persephone went very still. What is the gift? Demeter smiled. It's a special treatment for my arrows. I had my doubts, but Artemis truly came through for me this time. You can't mean to attack one of our own. Demeter scowled. And why not? She attacked me first, her and your father both, scheming behind my back to take you from me. She calmed herself with a deep breath. It will be self-defense. And you mean to go to the underworld to give her this gift? Persephone asked, not even trying to hide her disbelief. Poor, sweet, simple child. Of course not. Then she'll be coming here, Demeter said. Here? Yeah. She's like, I sent back your borrowed finery with an invitation to come atone for what she's done. She's like, I bet she's making arrangements right now. Persephone's like, she can't come to the overworld without permission. Oh, thank God. Maybe she can't come. Demeter's like, I'm sure she'll find some way of getting permission to get up here. And she's like, and you're going to be the perfect daughter when she comes, right? Demeter like smacks her at one point and is like, don't forget who gave you life. And Persephone's like, this is not living. I agree with her. Demeter says you've always been ungrateful. It's true. I have neglected my duty to you as a daughter, but then that fault is mine, isn't it? It's mine, not Hades. Demeter says, like, your punishment will come. But we're gonna do this first. You cannot. You would not truly harm Hades, will you? There must be three. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. The underworld needs a ruler. Demeter's like, it will have a ruler. It's no concern of yours. And Persephone's like, I was named queen consort of the underworld. It is my concern. You cling to that fantasy as much as you like, her mom says. And it's like, good night. And then she like slams the door shut. A year of solitude would not be enough to teach Persephone humility. She could see now that it would be an uphill battle. Yeah. Demeter smiled in relief to herself. Yes, a few more decades and she would have back her sweet, pliant Persephone. No more talk of the underworld, no more pining for power beyond her station. That would be forgotten like a bad dream. Demeter could scarcely wait. Yeah, she's an abusive, awful person, but I still don't get why we need it in her POV. I don't think we did. Now we're back with Persephone in chapter 25, and she's like, my mom is insane. My mom has lost the plot. I have to do something about this. She also wonders if like other people's daughters are treated this way, and she's like, probably not. They're not as wicked as me. And she's like, no, I need to stop thinking like that. In all the plays and poems she'd read in Hades' domain, the children were never locked up like this, save by a villain or an evil step-parent. That meant it wasn't right. But what were those tales except mere stories and allegories? Maybe Demeter was right and she was in the wrong. Maybe incorrect. She can hear something at the door and she says, hello, can anyone hear me? She doesn't get a response. She like slides down the door. She's not having a good time. She's like, I can't sit here and bear this. I can't let her kill her. I can't let her do this. She stands up and she presses her hand to the door, which is very, very old. It's very, very old wood, and its spirit rests in the underworld. She then tries deciding to like talk to the door and be like, hey, remember this was your body. You were a tree. Please, please listen to me. There's nothing for a while. She had begun to wonder if she'd gone mad with delusions of grandeur when the door exploded outward, away from her. Its wooden frame collapsing and taking a few of the bricks down with it. See, she can do crazy good things. She just doesn't believe in herself. She needs to work on that. She sees like a draken which had been left to guard her, and she's like, hey, you're here to protect me from intruders. Don't go off trying to kill me. And the draken's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. Like, good, I guess. Persephone throws like a water thing because drakens don't have great eyesight at night. And it's really dark down there, and so she can like squeeze through the space that it will make by chasing that thing. She gets struck by its front leg. It sends her flying across the room. She hits the wall. She rolls out of the way as fire is like being breathed at her. Somehow she is able to summon the ghost of the oak tree to help her, and like the beams are snapping in the building. Like she is like getting this tree to help her. It's hard to explain, but then the beam above her collapses. It makes the bed sag, but things are on fire now because that thing freaking blew fire everywhere. So she's trying to get out of the fire. The thing is dead though. The draken thing is dead. She pulls up her like dress over to cover her mouth from the smoke, and she's like trying to get out. She's coughing. She's choking at the other door, like the door to the outside. She's begging to be let out, and no one is listening to her. She just kind of like everything goes dark and she can't hear anything. We now get a Hades chapter. Interesting. Don't get it. Don't get why we're now doing altering POVs, but whatever. Hades is like, help me understand that you left my wife with her mother. Her crazy batshit insane mother. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, I literally told you not to do that. And he's like, well, it's Demeter's her mom. She has a right. Like, what the hell? And Hades is just like, get out of my sight. Get away from me. Leave. And Hermes is like, I can still help. And Hades is like, leave. Go. See ya. Hades knows that with the invitation, she's probably walking into a trap. But she's like, I really don't have a choice here. I don't have a choice. This is how it's going to be. She's like, I'm going alone. They're like, you can't go alone. She's like, I have to because Demeter will just paint herself the victim. And I can't do that right now. She's like, I can't go defenseless. She grabs her favorite sword. That's about it. And she's going to like head up on upstairs. She can feel like the necklace from Persephone like calling to her. And she's kind of like worried about that. That's kind of off-putting. When she gets to Demeter, she can smell fire. Breaking into a run. She's like, oh my god, there's a fire. She reaches the door and Persephone is there. Like she knows she's there. She can't open the door yet, but she knows that she's there. She jams the lock open and she's like, it's been a long time since I picked a lock, but I can make this work. And then when she opens it, Persephone is just like laying there looking like a corpse, and Hades thinks she looks beautiful, which is a little cray-cray. Hades thinks to herself, perhaps this was her punishment for finally wanting something, for needing something for herself alone, not because it bettered her realm or her people, but because she desired her. Like, I don't really think that's why this happened. I think this happened because your mother-in-law is a little bit mental, and also you shouldn't have done it this way. She gives Persephone mouth to mouth, like CPR. She then prays to Gaia and says like, I'm your child, please, 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 please listen to me. And she like prays for like a very long time, and then when she's finally like, after a long time, Persephone inhales and she's still alive. Yay. Chapter 27, we're getting really close. So Persephone's like, how are you here? Am I dead? And she's like, no, if you were dead, then like, no. She's like, we're in the overworld. You're not dead. Persephone says, you came back for me. And Hades says, always, because we have to copy Severus Snape forever, I guess. When will those books lose relevancy? They were never good. Persephone's like, how are you here? And she's like, I gave Zeus what he wanted. He wanted that guy, Pirate House. And Persephone's like, but his judgment. And Hades is like, he will be mine soon enough again. And he will fucking serve out his sentence then. She's like, I really thought you would be safe when I released you. I never suspected that such a thing would happen. Persephone's also starting to get like really teary, and Hades is too. And she's like, no, like, I don't blame you. Like, that's not your fault. Like, I'm to blame. No, Hades took a deep breath. Do not cast aspersions upon yourself. You alone are blameless in all of this. Demeter has fallen further than I had ever imagined. She gave Persephone's hand a squeeze, then released it. Can you stand? We must go. She hesitated. If you would accept my help. Persephone climbed to her feet with Hades following suit, watching her carefully as though she thought she might fall. Persephone wasn't that fragile. Will you take me back to the underworld? She asked. Hades clenched her jaw. If you would so desire. And if I don't? Hades glanced aside. I will not compel you. Persephone breathed out a sigh. That was a good start, but it wasn't enough. I have your word. It is yours. Now, after everything, Persephone finally had an inkling of what she wanted. No, what she needed. She had to have them both, Hades and the world above. She would not survive without either of them, not anymore. But now was not the time to voice her thoughts. Then yes, she said, we should go. Why? Hades has not yet enjoyed my hospitality. It's Mommy Dearest. She is here to finish things. Persephone is warning Hades and says, hey, my mom's found a weapon that can kill gods. We need to let go. We need to get out of here. Demeter is like, you've come here for a fight. And Hades was like, actually I came to talk. Like rational adults. Demeter laughs and says, a talker would have approached me for my blessing upon Persephone's marriage. You would have kept her under your thumb for eternity given the chance, Hades said. As is my right. Persephone stepped forward. You forfeited all rights to motherhood the first day you brought me to that cellar. I decide my fate now. She edged closer to Hades, and I choose to wed Hades. Hades just like glances at her with her eyes wide. Demeter's like, so sweet. That sickens me. Persephone's like, let us pass, mother. Zeus blessed our union. Thanks, Dad, for the one thing you ever did for me. And Demeter's like, and that should mean what exactly? Did he carry you for 9 months? Did he nurse you? It's like, you gave me life. I'll always be grateful for that. But I must make my own choices. He's like, you would truly choose her. And she's like, yeah, I would. Demeter says, so be it. And she has like an arrow ready to go. Persephone throws herself in front of Hades because she's like, absolutely the fuck not. Try it, bitch. She gets hit in the arm by said arrow. Hades is like, hey, you find Hermes, tell him to get Apollo's son. I cannot pronounce his name to save my life. I'm sorry. And Persephone's like, I don't need a healer. I just need to sleep. Good night. Good night. Hades says, sleep, dearest, the way you used to. Like the dissociating into the dreaming earth or whatever. Like, it will slow the poison. Let me help you. But this could not be so. It felt as though her flesh were melting. Surely her mother would never have done something so cruel. Incorrect. She's still screaming. She's like not doing well. Hades is like, return to Gaia, my precious flower. Just for a while, and like, please. And Persephone's like, okie doke, and does it. She doesn't really have a choice. Persephone wakes up in a real bed, yay. And it's actual sunlight, not the underworld. She has a big white scar on her arm from where Demeter had like hit her with the arrow, and she's like visibly like shaken and upset. She's going like, no, no, no. She's trembling. She tries to leave the bed. Her legs won't let her. 2 women are rushing in. They're in like Hades colors. They're here to like help her. They're like, she's like, where am I? Where am I? They're like, you're an imperious mistress, and this estate is owned by Hades. They're all like trying to help her, trying to make her stay in bed because she's still not well. She goes back to sleep. She keeps dreaming. She has like images. The next time she wakes up, she was not alone, and she sees Hades waiting for her. She's also in gray, and Persephone's like, I've never seen her wear that color. And I'm like, it's just black mixed with white. What are we talking about? And Hades is like, oh my god, you're awake. Thank Gaia. Oh my god. And Persephone's like, what day is it? She's like, in the time you've been unconscious, babes have grown into men. And Persephone's like, what? And Hades is like, easy, easy. I spent the years wondering if you would ever awake, Hades said, thinking you might die at any moment. Wouldn't I have been guided to the underworld then? Hades' gaze was full of misery. I don't know. That's so sad. And Apollo's son, what's his name, says like that she'll make a full recovery. He's not here, but Hades relays that information. She's like, is he here? I really want to thank him for saving me. And she's like, well, he kind of made Zeus mad, so he's one of mine now. He's big dead. It's like, but he should not receive all the credit. Like, you probably wouldn't have been able to recover if you couldn't like hibernate, basically. It's a dream, Persephone said. She raised a hand to her head, finding her hair twined into a loose braid. Even that simple motion was exhausting, and she dropped her hand back into her lap. What happened to Mother? When Demeter hurt you, she violated her own function as the personification of motherhood. As with Medea, that crime could no longer be ignored, Hades said. What about all those times she locked me in a cellar? Hades looked at her. It was never specified that she had to be a good mother. Yeah, the loopholes. That's a bad loophole. Oh. Was it not sufficient that she had already once abandoned her duties as goddess of the harvest, leaving so many to die? Humans die all the time, whether through divine intervention or their own folly. But to harm another god, Hades shrugged, her transgressions became too great for appeasement. Meaning, a chill ran through Persephone. They didn't hurt her, did they? Hades sighed, no. But they confiscated the rest of the Lianyu Hydra's venom and executed the mortal supply chain involved in procuring it. Demeter has been told in no uncertain terms not to make contact with you unless you so desire it. It was too much to take in all at once. I don't and won't desire it, at least for a century or so. But she's my mother. Yes, and she almost robbed you of your immortality, Hades said. I'm fine, Persephone said, trying to stand again. This doesn't work. Hades is like, no, don't stand up. She's like, I'm fine. And Hades is like, as you say. Who did you release from the underworld to be here this time? She asked. No one. Your role as my consort has been accepted by the gods, and I am within my rights to visit you after your convalescence. Hades' gaze softened. I have missed you. And I you. Something unreadable passed Hades' face. I confess you surprised me. And then Persephone's like, I'm full of surprises. And Hades is like, I brought you a gift. And Persephone's like, is it another severed head? I have murdered no demigods as of late. The administrative fallout was bad enough from the last time. Which I think is so funny. She comes and she gives her a pomegranate, kind of replacing the one that she had grown and was burned by her mother. And she's like, your grove and your land are doing really well, and it misses you, but it's doing great. She's like, if it's as long as you say, my tree must be so tall now. She's like, you could see for yourself if you want. And she like cuts the pomegranate wide open. I have not always treated you with the courtesy you deserve, but if you choose to return to my home, to return to me, it will not be as my slave, but as my wife. Hades took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Persephone's. I offer you my faith and my heart. Persephone smoothed the hem of her tunic over her knees, taking a moment to compose herself. You have done me ill, it's true. At first I could not stand the sight of you. I had nightmares, she said, her voice growing cold. For months. She held up a hand when it looked like Hades might speak. But you came for me when no one else would. When others willfully turned away because it was Demeter, because she was my mother and the keeper of the grain. You saved me. I'll never forget that. You saved me too when you took Demeter's arrow in my stead. Persephone ran her fingertips over her scar. I had to. I couldn't stand by and watch you suffer. Hades bowed her head. Why not? Because, Persephone trailed off, you know why. I saw Demeter was going to take you away forever, and I couldn't stand the thought of living in a world where you weren't. Where you no longer existed. Oh, Persephone, Hades whispered. And she talks about how she'll always be in her mother's shadow, how her mother will never let her forget that. But below, she feels like she has made a difference and she's appreciated. But she says, but I belong to the earth long before I ever met you. And I have to have the sun. Like, if I could capture a piece of it and bring it down for you, I would, which is like kind of romantic. I can't lie. Persephone says, I know. And then she counts out 6 pomegranate seeds. And she's like, I will dwell with you for half of the year for 6 months. And the other 6, I'll be upstairs. Will you accept? And Hades says, I would have you by my side always, but if I cannot, yes, I accept. She eats all the seeds. She's like, is it done? And Hades is like, yes, because like Persephone doesn't feel any different. And then she's like, may I? And then they kiss. They kiss, yay. Epilogue. Summer's ending. She's returning to her wife. And every time the cycles continue, their parting is bittersweet. And then their reunion is joyous and happy. The draken that she killed on accident, like huddles at her feet, which is super funny to me. It's just hanging out with her. Persephone is working on something for her mother. And Hades is like, hey, the century hasn't passed yet. And she's like, yeah, I know. I'm sure she's aware also. And I'm still doing it to be nice. She's like, what do you intend to do? If I don't see her, she'll keep harassing me and it'll be worse up there. She might even show up in person. What do you think I should do? Hades says, I couldn't say. She's like, you must have an opinion. She's like, in this case, it's irrelevant. Persephone says, I will go. I will see if she will breach my rules at any point, and if she does, I'm not gonna take it. I'm not gonna take it anymore. She's like, I should give her a chance to apologize. And Hades is like, if you must, but prepare yourself for disappointment. And Persephone says, always where she's concerned. It's late winter. She goes to visit her mom. Gonna go about as well as you can imagine. Do you shoot an effigy of me at the finale, or is that part conveniently forgotten? She's like talking about a festival or whatever. It's like, that little thing, are you still obsessed about it? Why, there's not a mark on you. And she's like, not on my skin anymore, but in real life. She's like, your letters implied you wanted to apologize. She's like, apologize for what? And she's like, what? You ran off with your Sonic lover, a match I did not approve. Hades robbed me of your presence and Zeus stole my parental rights. All of you should be apologizing to me. It's like, you shot a poisoned arrow at Hades, and it was the same one that killed a centaur. She's like, that again. She's like, you stole decades from my life then and before, and I was a child. You locked me in a cellar for years on end. What you did to me wasn't right. You don't know what it's like to be a mother, dear, and now I suppose you never will. So it was fine then, everything you've ever done. Everything I've done was to protect you from people like her. Well, it didn't work. It's not my fault you grew up to be a little slut. Thankfully, Persephone answers in the best way possible. Persephone stood, pressing her knees together to stop them from shaking. I see. In that case, I believe we should part. Thank you for your hospitality. Please don't write to me again. I'll ask the servants to burn any letters. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Goodbye, mother. That's it? Demeter asked, the legs of her client screeching across the floor as she stood. After all the sacrifices I made for you, all the tears I shed for you. But Persephone just like forces herself not to turn around. She's like going. She's gone. She's leaving. She talks to one of the boys, and she's like, he seems really nice. And she's like, if you ever need a job, go to my wife's estate over where I was recovering before. And he's like, thank you. She goes back home and Hades is like, I take it there was no satisfaction there. And she's like, no. She's shaking her head. It's over. I'll never see her again, Persephone sniffled. Never is a long time. If she changes, but she won't. It's pointless to keep hoping she will. Persephone wiped her eyes and gazed up at Hades. Don't be mad. I'll leave again in 7 days. I just can't bear to be on the same plane of existence as her right now. You're welcome here, Persephone, always. And then they hug and they're like having a hard time. And then it's over. Conclusion, everybody. This is going to be such a long video. I have like 5 hours of footage to go through. This is my favorite dark romance I've ever read. And I think it's simply because like it's written in third person, which is really nice because I don't have to have like the evil characters like incessant annoying thoughts the entire time. We had a protagonist who was very smart and capable, even if she didn't think herself so. She made her own decision to go no contact with her mother, who was extremely abusive to her. She ends up choosing her assaulter for herself, but it is also in the context of Greek gods and Greek mythology. So I do find it like less offensive. Like, would I have preferred the assault hadn't happened? Yes. However, I don't always mind reading about it, and I have said that on my channel in the past, and I feel we had plenty of warning, plenty of explanation. I didn't feel like surprised by anything or like triggered or worried as a victim of things. Like, I really appreciated the author's time on this. There is a bonus scene if you sign up for her newsletter. I did sign up. I haven't read it yet. Let me know if you want some thoughts on that at any point. But if you guys have made it this far, please leave like, I don't know if there's a little Undertaker emoji or what, but like, please tell me if you've read this book, what you thought of it. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. I hope you have a great weekend. Bye!